All right, cool. Here we go. All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of David's Saturday Night Sit Back. Tonight, I got Sage King from the gym sitting back with me. He's a Muay Thai fighter. He's a traveler. He's visited places like Oregon, national parks in Utah, Thailand, Japan, Tokyo, Cambodia, the Philippines, and that's just what I could find on his social media. When he's not traveling, you may find this guy at the gym, dropping beats oceanside with soundbar sets, hanging with friends around the campfire, and 2024 was the year that Sage and friends started their passion of bringing together people to throw insane parties and events. They love music and they love creating experiences for you. I learned a little bit about Sage's journey leading him to Austin, Texas, but I'm excited to deep dive into the details with all of you this evening. Sage, thank you for being here and welcome to your episode on David's Saturday Night Sit Back.
Thank you.
Yeah, dude. Why'd you say yes to coming on?
I really want to do music, right? Ultimately. And I feel like I've been in resistance to that for a little while, like actually taking steps towards getting it out there. And I kind of saw this as like, okay, this is an opportunity to be in front of eyes and to kind of get over that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have as far as I could find, because you don't have a lot on social, you only have one song, I guess you could say, published right now, correct?
Yeah. And that's more of like a side project.
Okay.
That's not, so yeah, I have one song on SoundCloud under a different alias, which is, it's like electronic music, which is kind of the more fitting to the raves that my friend and I throw. Like we play a lot of that type of music there. But in terms of my, like what I'm really passionate about pursuing, it's more singer-songwriter stuff.
You answered my question for me. Thank you. So you do what do you play anything?
Yeah, I play guitar.
Acoustic?
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
A tiny bit of piano, but I wouldn't put that on a resume.
Okay. Do you sing?
Yeah.
That's cool. Sing something. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Well, before we dive into music, we'll sort of circle back to that. Let's just jump right into it. So let's say you looked at your life as a book, and every day is one singular page. What do you think is one of the more important pages that we would need to know to understand who the man is sitting across from me today?
That's a great question. I'm going to steal that.
Please do. Use it as much as you want. It's not copyrighted.
Yeah, let me think about that a little bit. If I had to pick one day, it would be while I was in Thailand, and I had been listening to this book called The Book of Mastery, which is Paul Selig. It's like a channeled work. It's very much a book about spirituality, and I was listening to it after I had an injury, and I just went and stayed by the beach for a couple weeks, and I would just every day, it's sort of segmented so that he doesn't want you to read it too quickly. There's just an amount allocated per day. So I was making progress on the book. I'd listen to it while I walked to the beach, and then I'd swim for an hour at sunset and then walk back, and which was amazing. And I finished it. And I would say for a couple years, I had this idea of myself where sometimes I'd fall asleep and I'd have a dream. And in the dream, the person I was, the way I acted, the way I felt about things, felt more like me than when I would wake up. And so it was like I had this me at the edge of my consciousness, and I was just kind of aware of it. And so for a couple years, I had been really doing my best to try to move towards fully becoming this person. And there was one day in Thailand, in Bangkok, I was just staying at my apartment, and this was after I'd finished that book. And I woke up, and I just felt, I was like, it happened. And I could just tell that the shift had taken place. And it wasn't like I had this idea of a person and then became it. It felt like I had remembered myself. And I mean, I don't even know if I did anything that day, but I just was in my room, ecstatic.
Before you woke up that morning, what was the version of yourself you had dreamed of?
Well, I would say leading up to that, it kind of felt like I was going through a wormhole almost. And so in the maybe month prior to that day, I felt like I was kind of metamorphosing a little bit, but that's kind of more of a in retrospect. That's how I felt. In the moment, I was like, I don't know what's going on, but I feel kind of weird.
Yeah.
But before that day, it just a lot more unburdened, and the idea of that self, right? A lot more unburdened and more sure of what I wanted. And I think some of it was probably just on a like an energetic level, like intuitively just acting. I would think about, oh, do I want to be like this? And then after that day, it wasn't a question of do I want to be like this. It was more just this is how I am.
Hmm. How and what was the word that you used to describe that morning? Ecstatic?
Ecstatic. Yeah.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
I've seen myself grow up in phases where I'll notice that for a couple of months, maybe I've been acting more confidently or had a little bit more of a swagger in my step because the podcast has been going well, workouts are going well, things of that nature. But I haven't experienced that yet, like a something where I woke up and I felt some sort of shift in.
Mm.
Would in reality be the right word?
Yeah. Well, now looking back, like everything before that feels like it was somebody else's life. So, and that was less than a year ago. So, so I'm like 10 months old, I guess.
You're 10 months old. You're a baby. Youngest person to appear on the podcast to date.
Um, but I think the reason I had that though was because I had day in and day out, like I did have this really ingrained in my psyche, like, okay, this me exists, and I felt just a pull to it. It was like, this is who I'm supposed to be, and I'm going to get there sooner or later, but not being there felt painful. It felt uncomfortable, at least. And so, yeah, I guess I had the perspective of, I don't want to prolong not being like this. And so, there were a number, I pulled on whatever resources I could. So I was trying to better myself. Mainly, I would say just in the realm of overcoming fears and really facing, like, I would say a lot of things that I'd been holding on to residually. But I also, my mom is into like shamanism, and she had some friends that were her teachers that offered to do something for me, and I took them up on it. I'm very open-minded, and so not knowing hardly anything about shamanism, I was like, okay, go for it. And that actually had a pretty profound impact. And that was probably a bit over a year before my trip. So it had culminated.
All right, let's come back to this in a second, or in
Okay.
like an hour, probably.
Yeah.
Where'd you grow up? Because I know Austin is not home for you, correct?
No.
Where's home? Or where were you born, I guess I should say.
Okay, those are different answers.
Exactly. Yes, very different.
I was born in Prescott, Arizona.
Prescott, Arizona. Is that north, south, east, west, central Arizona?
You're putting me on the spot.
You don't even know?
I didn't live there for very long. I think it's
in Arizona.
In my memory, it's about 40 minutes from Flagstaff.
I have a funny story about Flagstaff.
Yeah?
When I was moving here, I moved here from Northern California.
Okay.
And so I left. I did not go down south because I wanted to avoid Los Angeles. And so I sort of left, headed east. And I think I hit Was it Arizona first? Now I'm putting myself on the spot. But I drove through maybe Nevada, then Arizona, and then New Mexico, and then to Texas. Does that sound right? Did I do those right? Boop, 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 boop. Doesn't matter. At some point, I drove through Arizona, and I saw
Yeah.
a sign that said Flagstaff, gas, fast food, sustenance. I was like, all right, I'm going to stop there. Tank's getting low. Stop in Flagstaff, get out of the car. I was going to walk the dog around the parking lot so he could piss, shit, all that good stuff. Get some waters, get some unhealthy food, and then be on our way. And while I was refilling the car, I'm looking around and noticing that there are people just wandering around aimlessly, looking like they don't even have a soul behind their eyeballs. Probably because they had been doing either meth or crack or who knows what for forever. It was wild, and never in my life have I felt so unsafe. I don't feel unsafe very often, but there I felt like if I made a noise, they were all going to slowly look at me and then kill me. So I sort of put the gas
Like zombies.
handle. Yes, zombies. That's
Yeah.
how coked out they were. It's like there weren't even humans
Wow.
or souls in the bodies anymore. So I put the thing back in the gas handle back in the tower, got back in the car, drove 3 more exits down, stopped at a different gas station in Arizona. It was much different. Everyone seemed alive and well to a certain extent. You ever go to Flagstaff?
Yeah, so my grandparents lived there. A lot of my family lived there. So that was a frequent visit, I guess.
Do you know the gas station I speak of?
Definitely not.
Hopefully your grandparents did not live close to it.
Definitely not. They were in a pretty nice spot.
How old were you when you left? Do you recall?
I hadn't turned 5 yet.
And I'm assuming you traveled with someone wherever you went.
Yeah,
next.
so I moved to Colorado with both of my parents, but they had split. And so, but like they wanted to stay friendly and co-parent and everything. So moved to basically Boulder County. I lived in Boulder with my dad and then Louisville with my mom, and we just did like an alternation. And I've moved a lot.
Yeah. How long did you stay in Boulder for?
Well, I only lived in Boulder proper for the 1 year.
Okay.
And then my dad moved to, I believe, Lafayette. And then,
Louisiana?
no, Colorado.
Oh, that's in Colorado.
Yeah,
too. Okay.
yeah, it's nearby. And then, I kind of just hopped around different parts of Boulder County. And then when I was 15, I moved to Washington State in the Columbia River Gorge.
Before you moved to Washington, what was life like growing up in Colorado?
A lot to do outside. That was the main thing, I guess. Just a lot of hiking, walks in nature. My mom was really into that. And then, socially, a lot of my friends definitely had decent amount of money, or their parents did. But I don't know, I never felt like I was in like Bougeville, and I never felt like I was in the ghetto. Like it was just a normal middle class sort of environment.
Who was your closest friend before you left for Washington?
Oh, that's a great question. Probably Devin Green.
Devin Green.
Devin Green.
You still in touch with Devin?
No.
Do you follow each other on social? Like if you wanted to reach out to him tonight, could you?
We do. Actually, I reached out sometime last year and didn't hear back. But his dad had, because I was friends with his dad as well. I knew his parents. And his dad invited me over for like a taco night or something. But I was in Austin. I was like, okay.
Oh, this was recently?
Yeah, last year.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, late
Okay.
last year. And then I went back to Boulder for Thanksgiving. And so I was like, oh, maybe we can do something, but the timing didn't really line up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you think Devin Green came to mind when I asked you that?
Well, he was actually a very recent friend before I moved. I had gone on a group trip to Costa Rica, So yeah, you're gonna have to add some more countries to the list.
I will add more. I will add more
Yeah.
countries.
So my mom taught Spanish for I think over a decade, and she started when I was in 5th grade. I'm pretty sure was the first year. She started leading with a group called EF Tours, which is Education First, leading these group trips to Spanish-speaking countries. And because she got a certain number of students to go, she was able to bring me for free, and I think she brought her mom. Well, she brought her mom, but I'm pretty sure it was free. I'm not sure if it was free on the first one we did. So we did Peru, and then we did Spain, and then we did Costa Rica and Nicaragua, and then we did Ecuador and the Galapagos, and then we did Costa Rica again and Panama. And so it was that last trip that happened right before I moved. And this was after my freshman year of high school, which was a pretty rough year overall. Not because of the nature of high school. Actually, I would say I definitely appreciated the social aspect. Like, school wasn't a sore spot for me. I just was not motivated at all to perform. But yeah, around that time, I was having a lot more conflict with just my parents, and I'd gone to a different high school than any of my friends. And so going on this trip to Costa Rica, I made some really close connections with some of the people there. So Devin, me, and then, I mean, our friend group that we kind of formed was us two, and then I think 4 girls. I'm not really in touch with any of them anymore.
Yeah.
But that was definitely like my closest bond before moving.
So the EF trips were when you were 14 in freshman year, you said?
Yeah, so that was the first one, or the last one.
Gotcha.
Right before moving.
What was the main reason freshman year rough because of what was going on with your parents, or was there other stuff going on too?
Definitely just at home. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have any siblings, or do you have any siblings?
No, I don't.
Only child.
Only child. Yeah.
How do you think that shows up today? Do you think you have any like only childness, like stereotypes, or even just like, yeah? I'll just leave it at that.
What are the stereotypes? I'll have people ask me. They'll be like, "Oh, of course you're an only child."
So the one that I saw in a friend in the past was he got everything he wanted. I sensed probably as a kid, and so sometimes as an adult, I noticed the same thing would happen, and it could be something very petty, such as like what bar we all went to, or it could be something very big, like someone would ask for his advice, and if they didn't take it, he would get very upset and be like, "Well, why aren't you taking it? I told you to do that. Why aren't you doing that?"
Okay.
I can't, it was funny because you could sort of see people react like, "Who the fuck do you think you are?"
Yeah.
Like I think one of the funniest ones was when someone was complaining about their job, and he told them, he's like, "Well, just quit." And they were like, "Well, I got bills to pay." He's like, "Well, then don't complain about it." And we were like, "Wait."
Okay.
They're not saying they want to quit. They're just saying they had a rough day at work.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? So I think that could be one. I knew an only child growing up called Daniel Onadera, I think his last name. And I think from what I remember, this was when I was really young, like 12 or 13. But I think he I grew up with 4 siblings, so I'm very used to sharing, and we all respect each other and whatnot. And he also seemed to get his way quite a bit. So I would say that's what I've seen in the few only children I know, is they sort of expect to get what they want in a way.
Okay. That's interesting. No.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, I'm stubborn. I can definitely be very, very stubborn, but yeah, no, I don't see that in myself.
Are you open to talking about how your parents' separation impacted your freshman year? Or not really your freshman year, but going from 13 to 14 to 15?
Sure. Yeah. Well, so they separated when I was 2.5.
Okay.
And then I actually don't have that much memory of I guess, like consciously being impacted by it. But I do remember, so my mom remarried, I think when I was 7, and I'm fairly certain they were together for 2 years and then split. Actually, this necklace was from my stepdad. So he was Latvian. This is a Latvian knot. But I remember when she split with him, I said something to her along the lines of, like, okay, well, like now that you're not married anymore, you and dad can get back together. And so there was definitely some degree of missing that family unit, but I don't think I was conscious of it.
Yeah. And then why move to Washington specifically? Do you remember how they picked that? Was it your
Yeah,
mom and you that moved, or who
my
all
dad.
went? You and your dad.
Yeah, so my dad wound up in a relationship with someone in Washington. Or well, I think she was in Oregon, but it's the Columbia River Gorge. So you have Washington, and then you have the river, and you have Oregon. So I was here, and then, right, I think before we moved, she was there, but then she moved over to the Washington side. Uh, and so I actually expected to move to Montrose, Colorado with my mom. That was kind of the plan. And then I went to go see my dad for like a week over the summer, a week or two. And driving into the Columbia River Gorge and into that town, I just felt really called to it. And so I decided that I wanted to live with him there.
When I moved here, I sort of blindly chose a spot when I was still in California, and when I showed up in Texas, it was dark out. So me and the dog drove into town, stumbled up the stairs, blew up an air mattress, fell asleep in the middle of the family room.
Sounds like what I did.
Yeah, same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. No dog
Um,
though.
no, you should get one. They're great. Maybe not with how much traveling you do. But we woke up the next morning and opening that door and just seeing like where we landed in
Oh,
Austin. It's like, oh my god, this is beautiful.
yeah.
Look at this place.
Yeah.
Stayed here ever since. I was planning on only staying here about 6 months, but I've been here over 2 years now, just because I don't want to leave this little corner of Austin.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was it? Just the sights that drew you in, or what was it for you?
No, it wasn't even. I mean, I remember like appreciating the beauty of it, but I'd grown up in Colorado and I was very used to really beautiful mountains
Yeah.
and driving through them. So I guess I wasn't. That didn't like blow me away. It was just driving into this little town. It was White Salmon. It has a population of 3,000, and there was just something about it where I felt like I was supposed to be there, I guess.
What was that?
There was just something enchanting about it.
Do you think it was your intuition at all?
I think, if anything, it was like divine intervention. I don't know. I don't know if I would have done it to myself to live there because it wound up being brutal for the first year or so.
Why so?
Just in terms of home environment. But I think that it played a massive role in like course correcting my life. And before that before I went to Costa Rica, I was playing a lot of video games. I was very I mean that had been what I did since I was little. I mean, when I was little, I did martial arts up until middle school, and I was really into that. And then I kind of had a knee injury and stopped, and then I didn't really have a hobby, and I just started playing more and more video games progressively. And so I remember that was one of the few things that I kind of got to spend time with my dad doing was if we played a game together. So I remember there's this game called Paragon, which was by Epic Games, that I really enjoyed, and I played it with him And then, and so I have like a lot of fondness and nostalgia over that, but it got canceled. And so then,
Ooh.
I know, there's actually a remake of it now, but, um, yeah, so it got shut down. I started playing a lot of Fortnite.
Never heard of it.
No?
I'm kidding.
It's an indie game.
I've heard of Fortnite.
Yeah, and I was trying to play it professionally. So, and I got fairly close. Um, I actually played with a couple players that wound up going on to be, like, now extremely successful. But it just wasn't. After I went to Costa Rica, my heart wasn't in it at all. Like, I had been pretty depressed, just, having no social life and just getting home and feeling an obligation to put hours into this game to be better at it so that I could make money. And then after like going and having a community of people that I grew really close to in a short amount of time, it just kind of reoriented me in terms of what I cared about.
Why in the Washington area, why did you have difficulty sort of reforming a new group of friends, do you think?
I didn't. I formed an amazing group of friends very quickly.
Where was it that you just referenced that you said you had a hard time forming?
So did I say I had a hard time forming friends?
Yeah. You mentioned the knee injury, and because of the knee injury, you started playing a lot more video games.
Oh,
and
well,
because-
I've never had a hard time making friends. It was just that I had no social life because I was prioritizing playing video games.
Gotcha. So you have friends, you just
So-
weren't putting a lot of
Exactly.
effort
Like
into them.
I would see them at school, or some of them I didn't go to the same school as, so then I just wouldn't see them.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
How old were you when you started martial arts?
6?
Was that your wanting, or was that
That
your
was my
parents?
wanting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think my parents wanted me to.
I know. I can't remember as far back as 6, but do you have any memories of like why you wanted that? Did you see someone?
Yeah.
Why'd you
So,
want that?
okay, so this guy named Kyle Galloway came to my school. So I started in 2nd grade. So I think I was 7.
You want a Zen?
No thanks.
All right, good for you. Right answer. Have you ever had one?
No.
Good. I'm not going to let you start tonight.
I've never consumed nicotine.
Good. Keep that up. All right, Kyle Galloway.
Yeah, so he came to my school and gave like a presentation, basically, and it was just like an after-school program he had a martial arts gym called Success Martial Arts, and I remember just really enjoying it. I was like, this is awesome. I want to learn how to do badass kicks. Like, sign me up. And so I got really into it. And then, I mean, that was kind of all she wrote. I remember at one point in time, that house I was staying at with my mom, our neighbors had 3 sons who were all older than me, and all I wanted to do was hang out with them. And so there was a certain point where I would fight with my mom. I was like, no, don't make me go to martial arts class. Like, I just want to hang out with the boys next door. And so then I took like a brief break, and then because my mom was like, I don't want to fight you on this. Like, I'm paying for you to do this.
Yeah.
And then I came back like begging to be signed back up. So
How long of a break was that, do you think?
I mean, I don't know if it would have been more than a year.
Okay.
And then
Why'd you want to hang out with those 3 guys so bad?
because they were older and super cool, and we had similar interests. It was I mean, I definitely had. I think the thing that most captivated me was like my imagination as a kid, and so anything that would kind of fuel that. So whether it was like a book or, something like Dungeons and Dragons, like I used to be really into that type of thing. And my neighbors were kind of into similar things in terms of, like, I remember getting Pokemon cards. I taught myself how to
Yes.
read so that I could read Pokemon cards when I was like 5. And my neighbors got into it, so we would like, play with those. But then we'd also go in the front yard and swing like foam swords at each other and like
Heck
pretend that we
yeah.
were knights and shit,
Yeah. Dude, I love doing stuff like that. We had a
Yeah.
lot of noodle medieval fights in like
Yeah.
pool growing up, and played lots of laser tag, and yeah, lots of similar stuff.
I had I have this vivid memory. I had this plastic baseball bat, and we were like, "Oh yeah, this is like a club. This is a perfect weapon to play with." And one of my neighbors had braces, and I just hit him square in the mouth with the plastic
Why?
baseball. Not on purpose. We were sword fighting.
It's like, Sage,
Yeah,
what
no.
are you doing? Sorting that poor kid.
No.
All right, good. I'm glad it was a sword fight. That's okay then.
Yeah.
Any lightsaber battles? Were you in the Star Wars scene at all?
I mean, I watched the movies with my parents, but I didn't. No, I didn't really have a lightsaber or anything.
Any did you ever get those rubber band guns where they actually had like a swivel on the end so you could put 12 rubber bands onto one gun?
Mm-mm.
And then they hurt.
Yeah?
Yeah, we walked out of those battles with some welts.
It's like paintball for kids.
Yes. Yeah, it's more intense than Nerf guns, not as intense as paintball. It's
I had
somewhere,
Nerf guns. That
it's
was
somewhere
my,
in the middle.
Yeah.
What was I going to ask you? You're talking about growing up, your imagination. Oh, with the Pokemon cards. So you taught yourself how to read so you could read those.
Yeah.
So when you got into school, were you almost more of like a slightly advanced reader since you not the full language, I would imagine, but like you knew some of the basics already?
So that was kindergarten when I taught myself. Yeah, I don't know if I would say slightly advanced. I would say very. I was reading a lot. Like, I really enjoyed it. As soon as I figured out how to read words, I just picked up chapter books and just started front to backing them in like a couple days. So, yeah.
Did you find that theme of sort of being more advanced stuck throughout high school or through your education, or was it more so just in the beginning stages when you had that sort of one advantage?
No, I was kind of always in advanced classes.
Did you feel like that set you apart at all in like a good way, a neutral way, a bad way, or was it just sort of like it is what it is? Sage is smart.
I felt like it was expected of me by my parents. And then I also felt like it was just normal. Like that was just how it was. I distinctly have this memory of being in 4th grade, and there's a student in the class that couldn't figure out how to do 3-digit addition. And I had to sit there for like half an hour while the teacher explained to the entire class, like over and over again. And I remember just being bored out of my mind. And so I wanted to be put in the advanced classes because it was just not whatsoever stimulating to be in the grade level stuff.
You were sitting there thinking, man, I wish I was in a sword fight with my friends
I
now.
was thinking,
This is a
yeah,
waste of my
basically.
time.
It's like, man, I would sneak read in class. Like I would have my paper and then I'd have my book and I'd have the book open and I'd just be trying to get through it while the teacher was talking.
That is so pure.
Yeah.
Is so nice.
You want to hear something even more pure?
Yes, I do.
I would wake up an hour before I was supposed to for school so I could read. I'd wake up in the morning at like 5:30 and read until 6:30, which is when like my mom wanted me to get up. Every day.
What were you reading?
I read a lot of stuff. I think the first series that I really dove into was probably Harry Potter. And, my mom knew it and liked it. And kids at school were talking about it. This was 2nd grade. And my parents wouldn't let me read past the 3rd book because it gets a lot darker. And so I had just been waiting. And as soon as I hit whatever age requirement they had, I was like a bat out of hell. I just hit those. I hit those books running.
I'm surprised you didn't sneak them into your room somehow.
Well, I didn't own them. They bought
Still,
me.
whether it was like through getting them through friends. Did you have any
Did
you have funds to any?
I was a
any
very
money?
obedient child. I didn't really break rules when I was a kid, and then look where I am now.
Are you a rule breaker now?
Yeah.
In what way?
I don't. I feel maybe it's because I was so obedient as a kid. Now I have this feeling where it's like, oh, like there's this rule that I don't agree with. I feel this need to go out of my way to break it.
What was the last rule that you broke?
I don't know. I don't put myself in situations where I have to follow rules.
Well, could it not even be so much rules as like if you see the bulk of your friends turning left, you'll turn right just out of principle? Is it sort of like that?
No, I wouldn't say it's that far. No, but it's. I think I just had a resentment of authority, partially because throughout schooling, I felt like a lot of the time I would have a teacher single me out for something that was solely based on their ego, where like I had already completed all of my work and say I was reading or something and they were giving me shit for it because I wasn't paying attention, but I wasn't learning anything from them. And so I think around there, like that could maybe that's one of the rooting reasons.
Yeah.
But in the gorge, when I lived in the gorge, that was definitely when that swap happened. Because I think my dad is similar. He has like, oh, you want me to do this? All right, fuck you. I'm going to do the opposite. So I think I picked that up from him a little bit. And then just in the gorge, all the best spots to go to the beach are trespassing. Or so then it just became really normal. It's like, okay, like this isn't that big a deal.
Was it trespassing because it was like private property, or was it just the city quarantined it off for the fuck of it?
Well, both. Some of the spots like people had died cliff jumping, and so they were closed, and you weren't allowed to go there. But then people
That sucks.
Yeah,
It sucks that they died, and it sucks that a part of it gets closed off.
I know.
Just
Yeah,
don't cliff jump there anymore.
right. Well, and the issue was that like the water was totally safe to jump into. It was deep. It was clear. It was because the cliff itself, you have. I mean, it was mostly vertical, probably up until like 30 or 40 feet, and then it started cutting in more, and people would try to jump from like 100, and they wouldn't clear the rock. So that was yeah.
We were out at Lake Travis last summer, and there is these this like island. That's a very generous term. There's a group of rocks
Okay.
that form a piece of land big enough that you can get on, and this one was not mostly vertical. And unless you're an Olympian, there is no way you could jump off this thing and clear the rocks.
Yeah.
And there were these two guys at the top, and you could tell that one of them was thinking about going. And I couldn't watch. Like, a part of me wanted to. I was like, oh my God, I'm about to see my first human death. And another part of me was just like, I don't want to see this guy hit the rocks. Like, I don't want that memory living rent free in my brain for who knows how long.
Yeah.
And there was like 3 boats all at the bottom, 2 with complete strangers, us being one of them, and then the boat that I'm pretty sure he was with. And everyone was yelling at him, like, don't do it, you're not going to clear. And I don't know if he was just messing with us because that's his sense of humor, is like scaring people.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
fucking with them for fun. But the way he was like yelling back, I was like, oh my God, he's going to do it. He didn't do it.
Okay.
I'm so happy he didn't do it.
Yeah.
Everyone's okay, at least from that event. So did you go into those trespassing spots anyways?
Of
Oh,
course.
Yeah. As you should.
Yeah.
It's nature.
Yeah, well-
it's there for us. Is my stance on it.
Well,
If it's not,
Some
if it's
of the-
someone's backyard, that's different. But like,
it wasn't someone's backyard, but a big part of the trespassing was because it was over railroad tracks. So we would have to cross over tracks, and that was, like sectioned off. And actually, like probably my favorite beach in the gorge, there's a walkway you can take that just goes under this bridge and under the tracks. And I would never take it because it was slightly less convenient. And so, but like living there, nobody gets hit by the train Like the train comes, you have room on one side with the fence, so you just stand against the fence and wait. Or if you're on the other side, you can just crouch down.
Right.
So it's not, I mean, because like the reason it's sectioned off is so they want to keep people safe and not, you know, mincemeat on the train tracks. But
Right.
but that was never, I never heard of anybody dying that way. And the train came multiple times when we were on the tracks, and we just had to move to a side. You can hear it so far out, and you can
Right.
feel the vibration that it's not like, I mean, maybe if you're really inebriated, but
But otherwise,
you should be good. Yeah.
Did religion play a factor in your home at all?
None.
None.
Mm-mm.
When did your mom start getting into her shaman activities?
That's a great question. I know she had interest in it for quite some time. And both my parents did trips to India and were into Sai Baba. They went and saw Sai Baba and did teachings. My dad and his parents went as well. And so, you know, I think it was kind of always there, like an interest in that realm of things. But my mom felt a lot more calling towards Native American culture, and I know she had a friend that was a shaman, and then she wanted to learn from her friend. So I remember her being interested in that type of thing, at least since I was 9 or 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the rest of your high school experience like, post freshman year?
It was awesome.
Yeah. What changed?
I'm gonna go back to Devin Green here.
Yes. Yes.
So on the trip, I was in the worst shape of my life by far.
Physically
right?
or mentally?
Both. And I meant physically, but it was both. And I had a lot of things to kind of get over. Like I found it really easy to present a confident outward appearance, and I didn't feel like I was faking and pretending to be somebody else, but I didn't have like an intrinsically rooted confidence in myself. And I knew I wasn't healthy. And this guy on this trip, right, he was a basketball player. He was waking up before everybody to run for like an hour. And I wasn't doing that, and I was tired as shit. We were so tired. We were extremely busy every day, go to bed late. We have like morning wake-up calls, and it's like at 7 or something, so that everyone has time to eat breakfast. And he would wake up an hour before the wake-up call to go run. And, you know, we stayed in a couple hotels that had a gym. He worked out there. And that was actually why I started working out, because I just observed he was more... I was kind of like the funny guy a little bit. And I mean, it wasn't that I didn't enjoy humor. Like, I still watch stand-up. But it was less authentic. I was kind of just looking for a way to have value, I guess. But observing him, I was like, okay, this guy knows something I don't. And the number one thing I could point to was that he was just physically fit. Like, he worked out and he had discipline. And so after the trip, I started working out and went really consistently for a while. And that made a massive difference because I didn't have, up to that point, I didn't really have any outlet. I would say I was a pretty repressed child. And that was the first real outlet I had for how I felt. And so I think that made a massive impact.
Yeah. I have a picture to show you.
Okay.
Since we're on this topic of working out. Is that you?
Yeah.
Holy cow. You made some progress.
Yeah.
Between when you were on that trip and Devin was getting up and running and that guy.
Yeah.
So this was in what year did you graduate?
High school?
Yeah.
22.
2022?
Uh-huh.
How old are you now?
I'm 20.
Oh, you're super young.
Yeah.
So that was 2020. So in 3 years you made that much progress.
Mhm.
That's insane. What it's one thing just to hit the gym. It's another thing to get on that level.
Yeah. I will say, I think because of doing martial arts as a kid, I mean, it's either that or it's just an intrinsic genetic thing, I guess, but I had really good proprioception. Like, since I first started, I have a really acute awareness of my body in space. And so I think that helped a lot. And then I also had, my back was kind of just strong when I started, and I don't know why, but but like I remember starting and I was so out of shape, and I was rowing like 100 pounds on the cable machine, and I was, I'm this like chunky 15-year-old.
You were chunky growing up?
No, I was lean growing up, but I was like skinny fat probably.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so I just really stuck to it, and I think, that being my only outlet made a massive impact because I was like, "Oh, I feel like shit. Okay, I'm going to work out." And it turns out that was pretty often. So I just worked out all the time.
When I saw
And
that picture, I almost didn't even think it was you.
yeah, well,
It
the
took-
long hair.
That
Yeah.
changes things, but and you're super tan in that picture. And
That's true.
There's a couple things going on, but I was like, and I hadn't seen you in 2 months because I just went through your Instagram like 3 or 4 days ago, so it was sort of fresh in my head. But when I scrolled across that picture, I was like, wait, is this someone he admires? Is this like some natural bodybuilder that he looks up to from afar? But that's you.
That's me.
How do you recall how much you weighed when you graduated and how much you weighed there?
Well, that was only like 5 months after I graduated. So I think I weighed 165.
How much did you put on? Do you know?
No.
Weight
Oh, from when I first started working out?
Yeah.
Well, when I first started working out, I was also shorter. So I don't know how much of
Was
the
height.
weight was height, but I weighed 145, I believe, when I first started working out, and I stayed at that weight for a year. And because I was getting leaner.
Right. So it was netting out because
Yeah.
you were losing fat, gaining muscle, probably.
Yeah, so I think the reason I made that much progress in 3 years was because I was working out like an insane person. I would go to the gym, and I can't remember if I did it at the start or the end of every workout. But I would go and I would do full body basically. I mean, I didn't do legs that much,
Uh-oh.
but no, like I just didn't do I didn't do squats because I didn't know the form and I wasn't confident in that. But I did leg press, and I did same deal with deadlift. Like I tried it a couple times and I just didn't feel super solid on it. But I would do 30 to 40 minutes of sprints every workout. And because I wanted to get leaner. And so that made a big impact. So I'd be at the gym for like 2 to 3 hours every time. And then I remember, so this was my sophomore year of high school. I made myself sick. I went to the gym, and I think I didn't have enough food in me. But I just bottomed out. Like, I completely depleted my glycogen. But, I didn't know what that meant.
Right.
But there was nothing left. I just hit this point in the workout where I was lightheaded and shaky. And, I finished the workout, and my dad came and picked me up. And I was like, okay, I'll feel better when I eat something. And so I had a meal, and then I didn't feel any different. I was like, okay, this is a little bit concerning. And I woke up the next day, and I didn't go to school. Like, I felt so incapacitated that I was like, Dad, can I just bail? Like, can I just play hooky today? And he was like, yeah. So yeah, he was definitely the supporter of the rule breaking.
The truth comes out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, kudos to you for getting to that point. Was that for a show? Like, why'd you get so tan? Is that just because you were outside all the
I
time?
was just outside.
Okay.
That's that Italian blood.
The Italian. Is that what you are predominantly?
I think a quarter.
A quarter. What's the rest?
I know there's some Swedish. So my mom's dad was like pure Italian. He's the most Italian looking guy. If you see a picture of him, like you would know.
Yeah.
And then on my dad's side, I think my grandma was like half Swedish.
Okay.
So then that would make me an eighth, I guess.
Yeah.
But I don't know too. I think beyond that, it's just kind of a medley. Some English. Yeah.
When you graduated high school, at that point, actually, before I'll circle back to that in a second.
Okay.
How'd you hurt your knee?
Oh, I was sparring one of the instructors, and I kicked her in the head at this at the same time that she hit me in the body, and just because of the angle, she hit me, and my weight went this way, and this was my supporting knee, and it just felt like it shifted out of place, and I just dropped, and it was very shaky and hurt a little bit, but then I would never know that something had happened to it now, like full recovery, but that was enough that I took some time off.
Did you have to have any surgeries or anything, or did you just rest it?
No, I saw a chiropractor, and I don't remember what he said. I went with my mom. He just something along the lines of having a natural disposition towards loose joints, and so I just needed to strengthen my joints a lot, and then that was kind of the end of the day. But I remember for a few years, when it would be like cold outside, sometimes it would hurt when I walked. But honestly, I forgot that I'd ever injured it until I brought it up just now. Like, I think when I started working out and just being really active, it just course corrected.
And even when you were going through your phase of doing the 30 to 40-minute sprints, and wouldn't it flare up?
Oh, for sure.
Oh, it would.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't. It wouldn't.
Oh,
like,
oh, good.
Yeah, no, I was. Yeah, I was possessed. I don't know if I would have felt pain at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I did that a lot, and then I wound up becoming a personal trainer. That was my first job out of high school. Well, that's half true. I worked at a kids' gymnastics gym, and I worked as a dishwasher. But that was my first like real job.
Did you go and get through your certification through like AFA or NASM or something?
NASM. Yeah, I did it through NASM. And actually what kind of started me was I read this book called Overcoming Gravity, which is about body weight training. And so it's kind of geared towards gymnastics. And it just has I think it's a great book. I learned a lot from it. I based the training I do today on it. I really kind of just took home like just full body 3 days a week. Just consistently till the end of time.
Do you still do that to this day?
Yeah, well, I just started going again, but that's what I did this week. I went Tuesday, Thursday, and today, and I did full body. And today was rough. I raved last night. The last 2 nights I was up past 4. I was so beat at the gym today, but I got through it.
Attaboy.
Yeah.
You take any pre-workout?
Nothing. No caffeine.
Good.
Yeah. I used to. That's probably... Actually, no, because I was going to say that might be part of why I was so insane, but I didn't start taking pre-workout until I'd already kind of gotten past that phase. I just wanted abs so bad, and so all I could think was like, okay, I just have to do cardio. Just keep lifting and do cardio. And then one day I was looking in the mirror and I was like, no way.
There it is.
No way. Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely, I don't remember what year it was from, but you might recall this picture where you're in like a stance where you have one leg up and
that was
both
the Muay Thai outfit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you look jacked.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And you definitely have a great six-pack in that picture.
That was right. Okay, that was Halloween. That was at the very beginning of my junior year of high school. And I did abs every day for a month leading up to those pictures because I knew I was going to be a Muay Thai fighter and I wanted to get them as defined as possible.
Was that there we might be referencing two different pictures actually.
Oh, really? Okay.
So the one that I was referencing was this one.
Yeah, that one.
You are referencing the same one.
Yeah.
So then let me ask you a follow-up question. Is this also you or is this someone else?
That's me.
That's you?
Yeah.
That's another one where I couldn't tell between the costume and whatnot. I was just like, is that him? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Dude, congratulations.
Thank you.
I mean, lots of hard work goes into it. I think
Yeah.
sometimes people see pictures like that and they don't realize the shit that we put our bodies through behind the scenes in order to get to that point.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't just come now. Like you said, it could be partly genetics, but no one looks like that without trying.
No. The only person I know that looks just insane.
Are you going to say Devin Green?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm not. No, my best friend, Benny, he is just a freak. This guy has probably never been higher than 8% body fat in his life. And
Is he strong?
yes. He weighs like 145 and he's benching like 240 right now.
Jeez. Does he go to that gym I met you at?
No, he lives in Hawaii.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of course he does.
Yeah. He goes to college at Hilo.
How's he like
University
it
of
going
Hawaii.
to college on an island?
He loves it. Well, he's half Indonesian, so everyone thinks he's a local. And I think that definitely played to his advantage when he first started there.
Yeah.
But no, he grew up in the Columbia River Gorge. That's where I met him.
Yeah.
And he's done sports his whole life. That's got to be why. Like he was
His
doing
metabolism's probably just like racing if he's been doing cardio consistently for his entire existence.
I mean, I don't know if this guy ever went a full year without doing like 5 different sports.
Jeez.
So he did sailing. That was like one of his main ones. And I think Hawaii made a lot of sense for him to end up at. But actually, I thought of him when you were talking about the cliff jumping thing.
Yeah.
I have this distinct memory, and this was before I was close with him. He was just like the really jacked guy that was the older brother of one of my friends. And we were at this like it was at my favorite beach. You just have to walk across these rocks for a ways. And there's a rock that's like maybe 12, 15 feet that you can jump off of. And so we would go there and we'd jump and then we'd lie in the sun on the rocks. And this guy is the most like adrenaline junkie, maybe less now, but he was. And he gets on this ledge that's only maybe 4 or 5 feet out of the water. And he's like, I really want to try to jump into the water from here. It was 8 feet of rock. Like barely covered by water. So it wasn't only that if he didn't jump far enough, he'd land on rock. It would be slick rock and down like 5 or 6 feet. And he would almost certainly be breaking something.
Yes.
And we were all trying to convince him not to do it. He goes, nah, you know what? Like, I'm doing it. And he just cleared it. It's like a 9-foot broad jump.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Benny is a freak.
Yeah.
I have a friend, I want to call him a freak per se, but one thing he's always had is big arms. And he went through like a 6-month stint where he didn't work out. It was March through August. So maybe 5 months. And he went through about a 5-month stint where he didn't work out at all. And when I saw him for the first time in either August or September, his arms still looked great. And I was like, you swear you haven't been to the gym? He's like, dude, I haven't had time. Like, your arms are jacked. Like, what are you talking about? You got to have been sneaking in and just doing like buys and tries once a week or something. He's like, no, I swear I haven't done anything.
I relate to that a lot. Where I have been that person. Like, I've taken months off of the gym. And then, not my arms per se, but my back. Like, then I'll go swimming with my friends or something, and they're like, oh, like, nice, you've been hitting the gym. Like, your back's looking good. And I'm like, well, I think I went once in the last 6 months.
Was that partly due to martial arts? The only reason I ask is example I'll give is I have a couple buddies who, for example, they did a lot of rowing in high school.
Mm.
Not like a row machine, but like
Yeah.
they were part of a rowing club where they were out on the water, rowing canoes, boats.
Yeah.
And so they always just have that like perfect V taper and
I
their
see.
backs are always jacked. Does martial arts also sort of have that like bonus effect at all because of the way you train?
I think it just gave me a good butt.
Fair
Because
enough.
I would just do. Really, what I loved about it was kicking. Have you heard of the show One Punch Man?
No,
Okay,
maybe.
it's a manga. It's like an anime.
That's why I'm not an anime
But okay,
person.
the entire premise is basically just that the main guy can defeat anything with one punch, and he's basically invincible. But it's set in this world where like everybody else are these cliche, like corny trope characters. They're like, oh, like I need to, become the rank 1 hero. Like I need to become the strongest. And this main character, his name's Saitama, is like taking a bubble bath. Like, fuck, I missed the sale at the market yesterday. Like he just doesn't, like he's not even cognizant of it. He just walks around and there's some giant monster. He's like, oh yeah, okay, and just punches it and it's gone. And then he just carries on. And so I wanted to get my kick to be like that. I wanted to be able to kick anybody once and have it end a fight. So I would just drill thousands of kicks. So I got really, really strong obliques and butt, basically.
So how is your kick action now?
I haven't trained it in a year. It's probably still pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. At least my right leg. So I sprained my right ankle when I was in Thailand. And I wouldn't feel super confident pivoting on it. So kicking with my left leg, having the torque on my right ankle.
Yeah.
But I feel great about kicking someone with my right leg.
I know when we first met, you were rehabbing it a little bit. How's it doing
Yeah.
present day?
Good enough to play pickleball, not good enough to play volleyball or fight.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now's the time to fight you. No, I'm just kidding. I
Yeah.
still watch out. So I know you mentioned that after you graduated high school, you were a personal trainer for a bit. Was that just because of your passion for working out, or were you sort of also using it as a way to sort of figure out what you wanted to do long term?
All of the above.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely viewed it as something that could be like a really long-term profession. But going into it, it was just like, this is something I have done so much research on. I could have started the job without doing the certification.
Yeah.
Like where I was before I did the course, I would say was more educated and confident than most of the coworkers I had that had done the course,
Yeah.
but did they?
Yeah, because this course, if NASM's anything, I got certified through AFA, and basically, if you're a good test taker, you can almost go in, take the exam, and boom, all of a sudden you're
Exactly.
a personal trainer, which is one of my sort of mini qualms with the industry.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I'm a great test taker, so I think I was in and out in 17 minutes. So
I mean, I was in there for a couple hours myself. I don't remember how long, but it was not 17 minutes.
it was just and
So
it was
you were just going through, and you're like, question, answer, question, answer, question, answer.
exactly, yeah. But I don't want to diss all my coworkers like that. Like I absolutely
We
had
can diss them. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
some of them very merited, but no, I had coworkers that were way more knowledgeable in areas than I have ever been. Like I had a coworker that did body work like extensively, and he had a really thorough understanding of anatomy. Like, I have a pretty good understanding, but not like that. Like he used to be a paramedic, so or like an EMT, so he just knew it. Like yeah.
Were you good at what you did,
Yeah.
personal training wise?
Yeah.
Your clients liked you.
Oh yeah.
They kept buying.
I'm still in touch with some of them.
Nice. How long did you do that for?
A year and 3 months.
What
And
happened? Or go ahead.
and then I went to Thailand.
Why'd you go to Thailand?
To train Muay Thai.
Had you done any Muay Thai up to that point?
Yeah, I'd been training for about 3 years.
Were you in Austin yet at this point, or where were you before you went to Thailand?
I had never been to Texas before I moved here.
Why did you want to go to such an extreme of going to Thailand versus just going to the local Muay Thai gym?
You know what got me into Muay Thai? Because this was something I'd always been into martial arts growing up, and then I didn't from the age of probably 11 or 12 to 16, 15, 16. And then I believe it was during quarantine, I watched a bunch of documentaries about these gyms in Thailand and how they would do like fight camps and just the lifestyle of just waking up and training all day. Like to me, I was waking up and I was usually attending my online classes, and then I would go to the beach with my friends. But if my friends were busy, then I was like, what do I do? Like, school sucks. This is boring. I had a couple classes that I enjoyed, and I did, I did really well in them. But I had a couple classes that I was just not at all captivated by. And so I was just imagining, like, what if I could just wake up and then train Muay Thai for like 3 hours and then eat Thai food and then go to the beach and train on the beach and then come back and do more training. Like,
that sounds like a terrible idea.
16-year-old me, I remember I wrote out like this dream schedule. And because there was always just appeal to becoming like an all-around athlete. And so my dream schedule was like time blocked. I think I was doing like 5 hours of Muay Thai and MMA on a daily basis. And then I was doing a couple hours of gymnastics. And I was doing a couple hours of strength training. And then I had like 3 hours to do other things. And it was like, go to the beach. And that was like my dream schedule.
Where were you living before you moved to Thailand?
I was in Boulder. So I moved back.
Excuse me.
You're good. I moved back from Washington. I lived there from 15 to 17. And then I moved back to Boulder for my senior year of high school. Moved back in with my mom. And she came back just for that year. And so I lived with her and a really close family friend. And then she moved out, which was kind of a funny dynamic.
Because you were with the family friend.
Yeah. Like, I stayed in the house, and she went to live in the same town as her parents. And yeah, I stayed in Boulder, but I would say by the time I went to Thailand, I was disenchanted.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What were you disenchanted about?
The social life. Yeah, that would be the main thing. I just found that most people I met were local, were very outdoorsy, and also very often stoners. And I didn't smoke. And I got the feedback a couple of times that I was like too intense. They didn't tell me, they told my friends.
And then they'd report back to you.
Yeah. No, I mean, that was only once, I think.
Intense in your training style, intense in your personality?
No, my personality. Yeah.
Are you?
Maybe. Depends.
You seem very focused.
I'm very focused. Yeah. It depends on who you ask. I don't think I'm that intense, but
The first time I met you, I definitely wouldn't have used the word intense.
yeah.
I'd say friendly, articulate, outgoing, interesting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What made you come up to me in the gym?
We made eye contact a couple times, and I don't usually work out at that gym, and I figured, fuck it, let's ask.
Cool.
As simple as that.
I was looking at you because of your tank top.
Oh, thanks. You were in awe of the pecs?
I was no, actually, to be well, not dissing your physique.
Thanks.
But I
I'm
remember
kidding.
I remember looking over and I was like, I was just reminded because I worked in a gym, right, for over a year, and there were always the guys that would come in, and you had to keep your shirt on in the gym I worked at. And the guys that would take their shirt off were consistently just the douchiest, like, thought the most of themselves. Like, they were on top of everybody there. And I was looking at you and I was like, is Gold's Gym just more chill? Like, could I do that?
Yeah.
And because after training in Thailand, right, I was training in Muay Thai shorts and nothing else every day because it's so hot and humid and the gym's outside. Like, it was covered, but it was open air. And so wearing a shirt would have been insane.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's why I was looking at you. I was like, oh, like, I wonder if this guy's an asshole like those other guys or if it's just chill here.
It's just chill there.
And then you came over and I was like, okay, this guy's just cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they don't care there. I think if you probably took your shirt off completely, they might come up and say something.
Yeah.
But yeah, Gold in general, I don't think they really give a fuck what you wear too much.
Yeah.
I will say though, have you ever been to Planet Fitness?
No.
I have a funny story for you about
Okay.
them. Do you know anything about them?
Just what's it called? The hunk alarm?
It's not hunk.
What is it?
Maybe lunk.
Lunk alarm. That sounds right.
I think it's lunk. So I didn't know about the lunk alarm. I knew nothing about them. But my buddy, he invited me to work out with them once at one of the Planet Fitnesses here in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
And so I go with them and we show up. I fill out my little guest pass thing. We head into the gym. And about halfway through the workout, I take my t-shirt off, and I'm probably wearing either that shirt or a very similar shirt on the free weight floor. And within like 60 seconds of me taking my shirt off, this big red alarm on the wall starts going off. And so I looked at my buddy. I was like, dude, is there a fucking fire? Like, do we got to get out of here? And he was like, no, bro, I think it's you. I was like, you think it's me? What's me? And by the way, when we had walked in, everywhere in the gym they have these little murals that say no judgment zone, judgment free zone.
Oh,
and I'm like, that's sort of
that.
a nice idea, like judgment free zone. I like that. That's cool. And so this alarm is going off and he's like, no, it's you. And I was like, what do you mean me? He's like, I think you should put your shirt back on. I was like, I have a shirt on. And he's like, no, like your shirt. And then he's like, look at the front desk guy. And so I look over and the front desk guy with this like just I can't do it right now because I'm laughing at the story. But he has this like blank look on his face, and he's pointing at me like this. And so I just sort of like leaned over and picked up my t-shirt and put my shirt back on, and then he goes, he flips the switch off, and the alarm turns off. And it's like, Tom, this is like the most I've ever been judged in a gym. This isn't a judgment-free zone. Like, they just set off a fucking alarm because what? I had my nipples out? Like, who gives a fuck? It's a gym.
Yeah.
That was weird. I've never gone back. Not because I care about the alarm so much, but just because, one, none of my friends work out there except Tom. Two, they only have their dumbbells only go up to a certain weight. It's like 70 or something. So if you're trying to do anything heavier...
Oh, 70.
I think so.
Okay.
I remember him asking, he's like, what would you need something heavier than 70 for? It's like, I don't know, chest press, lunges, back rows.
Yeah.
A lot of things, Tom. Like, I need
anything
at least up to 100, like minimum.
Yeah.
But no, it was just such a funny, weird trip to the gym. So yeah, if you ever go to Gold's and you want to wear a stringer, go for it. You'll be safe. No alarms will go off. People will not assume you're a douchebag. Some of them maybe, some of the people that are maybe douchebags, but I don't think people see that and they're automatically just like, oh, that guy's an asshole.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely had that perception of Planet Fitness. But I have one positive thing to say on their behalf. And
Let's hear it.
I remember it's when I was in high school. There was one pretty close by my house. And they did like a free, I think maybe it was 6 months. A free 6 months for all youth.
Oh,
and
cool.
And they just could come to the gym. And I think it was supposed to be dedicated as like maybe either an after school or a summer thing, so that the kids in school had something to do. So there's something there.
There's something there.
Yeah.
All right, I'll give them a little break for that one, I guess. Supporting the youth. That's cool.
Those Those assholes supporting the youth. How dare they?
Yeah, no, that's funny, though. And I have been trying to make a habit of trying to invite more people on the show organically or in the wild. And so there have probably been like a dozen people up to this point where I approached them just like you, where maybe I saw either a tattoo that was interesting, or like the next guy I want to ask, he's a guy that goes to the gym I go to 90% of the time. He's probably like 55 years old, if I had to guess, 6'5", 6'6", and just the most jacked dude I've ever seen. I'm like, there's a story there.
Yeah.
There's something going on with this guy to be that healthy at that age. Like, I can't not ask him.
It's just Tren.
You're like, there's no story, dude. It'll be a 5-minute episode.
Come in. You're like, how are you so jacked? He's like, oh, here's my cycle.
Like, all right, episode over. Yeah, no, I just like to ask people, man, and see.
Yeah.
You know, I have a lot of people that don't come on that I've asked. I have some people who gave me their number and say they will come on, and then when I follow up with them, I never hear back again. And then there's people like yourself who come on, and we have a great time, and it all works out.
Yeah.
So so what was there any roadblocks to, you know, the image you painted of Thailand sounds great. You could fight, you could eat, you could go on the beach, go back to sleep. Was there any resistance to that, either like financially, parents didn't think it was a good idea, or was everyone on board, the money was there, and you were like, all right, see you guys in 6 months?
No, both of those. Definitely both of those. My parents were, I think, especially my dad, because my dad got me into UFC. And then I was like, oh, I want to do this. And he was like, hold on.
Stay here, do UFC.
No, he didn't want me to. He was like, okay, like it's fun to watch, but I don't want you getting hurt.
Wait, if he did it, why did he get you into the UFC if he didn't want you to do it?
No, like he got me into watching it. Is what I mean.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I thought you meant like he submitted your
no.
fighting resume to the ultimate.
No, he got me into watching it when I was like 11.
Gotcha.
And
I
we started.
misunderstood.
Yeah, no, easy miscommunication. He got me interested in MMA, and so then I would watch it with him. And then I got into Muay Thai because of those documentaries. And I got, and my parents were all for that. And I started going to kickboxing classes. And they got me a heavy bag. I still have it. It's like a nice, it says it's 6 foot, but it is a lot bigger than that. Just this fat banana. I think it got stretched out over time. But this big, heavy bag. And I hung it outside. And every day I would go out there. And I basically just taught myself how to kick. And I just watched videos of really good fighters, and then I would try to remember what they did, and then just figure it out on the bag. And then when I wanted to go to Thailand, my parents were like, okay, hold on. There's a lot of risk involved in that you don't have training at home, because there are just a lot of details. Like I know my mom helped out a bit in terms of planning. She was like, oh, you need to get travel insurance. And I was like, that's a thing. So
all right, easy. Let's get it.
Yeah. And she was like, you should go to the doctor and make sure you get your the right immunizations. And I was like, oh yeah. I should do that. So I tend to just do things. So it was definitely good. She worries, and so she worried about some pretty rational things out there, and that helped me be prepared. But that was kind of my personal trainer gig. My intention was to just save up so that I could go to Asia.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to go a year earlier than I did, but I sprained my ankle, same ankle, but a year before, doing box jumps like a moron. I had these 2 blocks stacked on top of each other, and they were these foam blocks. I was doing I think it was like a 48-inch box jump, and they weren't supported by anything. They're just in the middle of the floor. And so eventually I got tired and I messed one of the jumps up, and I was just a little bit on the edge, and the foam block just flipped out underneath me because it wasn't supported. And I tried to catch myself, and I like kicked the other foam block and landed. The camera can't see it, but just at the worst angle on my ankle from like 4 feet. And it was right after I got into volleyball too. I just got into volleyball. I just got in a pair of volleyball shoes. I was in a club. Like I was having a lot of fun with that. But that postponed my trip, and realistically, I wouldn't have had the funds anyway. Like, personal training was a much slower start than I'd realized. I had to build up clientele. And so I think having that year of working was really good. But it was a self-financed thing. I mean, like whenever it was the holidays or my birthday or anything, or like a graduation gift, I just asked for cash.
Yeah.
And I put it towards the trip.
Heck yeah.
But it was, other than that, it was self-financed.
If you don't mind me asking, how much did it end up costing you?
Okay,
Ballpark.
4 months, all flights included. So I did 3 months in Thailand. I did a week in Cambodia, a week in the Philippines, a week in Japan. And then I came back and stayed with Benny for 2 weeks in Hawaii. And then I went back to visit my dad in St. George, Utah. And all flights, everything included, I think it came out to somewhere between 7,000 and 8,000, which is kind of ridiculous.
Kind of, but kind of not.
No, like ridiculously cheap.
Oh, okay. That's where I was leaning as well. At first, I thought you meant ridiculous expensive.
No.
Yeah, I was gonna say 7,000
Like, that's
to 8,000 for all of that.
That's what I would.
And that's including like food.
I know
Housing,
it's
training,
like 1,800 a
everything.
month. Yeah. So, and it would have been cheaper, but I got a different visa than what I applied for. I applied for a Muay Thai visa, and I had to give them all my gym documentation and everything to show that I'd booked out. And I get my email from the Thai embassy, and it says approved, and I'm like, great. They gave me a 60-day tourist visa, and I didn't notice, which is I don't know how I didn't notice, but I didn't notice until 3 or 4 days before I left Thailand, and I lost my debit card, and I had to go to this Western Union to get like a currency transfer. Because I didn't cancel my card after I lost it. I think it got chewed up by an ATM. I put it in, and then I grabbed my money, and the card didn't come back out. And I just, like, blanked. I was in a conversation with my friend. And then I realized, and I was like, wait, where'd it go? And I called them. But, well, one of my local friends called them for me and explained the issue. But because I lost it on, I think, a Friday, and we called on Monday, they clear it every weekend, so it was just gone. So I go to this Western Union to withdraw my money, and I need to give them my passport and my transaction number. And I give them both, right? And this woman behind the desk looks at my passport, and she looks at me, and she goes, overstay. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? And I only had like, I think I'd overstayed 27 days at that point. And I thought she was just reading it wrong because I was so sure that I'd applied for a 90-day visa. And so she tells me, okay, you have to go into the Thai embassy website and show me like the correct visa then, and prove that this is just a mistake because the stamped date was a month prior to what it was supposed to be, and I don't know how I didn't catch that, but and so I pull it up on the website, and then I see that I had a 60-day tourist visa, and I'm like, oh shit, like she's right. I did overstay.
Whoops.
I know, yeah, and so then I had to bluff my way into getting my money, and so I like pulled up the website page for the type of visa I had applied for, the Muay Thai and other sport. Like you can get it for scuba diving too. Super cool that they offer that.
Yeah.
And I just show it to her, and she's like, does it have your name anywhere? And I pretend to look. I'm like, oh, weird, like it doesn't. And she takes my phone and she takes a picture of my phone with like the Muay Thai visa page on the Thai embassy website, and then I get my money. And now, yeah, and now I'm like, I need to go to the Bureau of Immigration to see if I can, because I knew there were consequences for overstaying, but I didn't know how bad they were. I knew 90 days or longer of overstay could get you a ban from the country.
Jeez.
But yeah, but unless it's like really long, I think the ban is at most a year. Like I think for 90 days, it's like a 6 month or a year ban. But it makes sense that they would have regulations around that when it's such a tourism funded country.
It's true.
So I go to the Bureau of Immigration, and they're basically like, you know, you could pay to extend your visa, but you're going to have to pay this lump sum either way, and 3 more days of overstay would be cheaper than extending the visa. I had to pay $500 at the border to leave the country. If I hadn't, and I wonder, like, if I hadn't lost my debit card, and I just wouldn't have had that much cash on hand, I wonder if, like, they wouldn't have let me leave, right?
That's
So
what I
there's-
was just going to ask you, is what would have happened if you showed up with no money or not 500 cash?
Yeah, I mean, I figure there was probably an ATM by the border, but if there wasn't, I would just have to take a bus back to Bangkok, I guess, get it fixed, and then come back. So that was $500 down the drain, and then I was supposed to spend like 3 nights in Cambodia and then 4 in Vietnam, and I put in my visa application for Vietnam. Everybody I talked to, by the way, was like, "Oh no, you can get your visa on arrival in Vietnam." My cousin lives in Manila in the Philippines. He's been there for 7 years, in Hong Kong for 7 years before that. So he's super well versed with Eastern Asia. And I talked to him and he was like, yeah, you can just get it on arrival. And like the day before I'm going to go to Vietnam, I double check online and I like looked more thoroughly into it, and you can only get a visa on arrival if you fly in. You can't get it at the land border. And I'm like, shit, I have a flight booked from Ho Chi Minh City to Manila. And I booked through like the cheapest thing possible, so I can't change or cancel it. And so I pay like $90 to submit my visa application with 24-hour processing time. And the next day comes around, I get on the overnight bus with no visa. And I'm there with I made a friend who was from Myanmar, and he sought asylum in Thailand, and so I'd met him there. And he came with me to Cambodia, and we were going to Vietnam together. So we get on the night bus, and we ride, and, you know, we swap buses, and then in the morning, we arrive at the border, and it's probably like 11, like late morning. And I haven't gotten it yet, so I have to get out of the bus, and there's supposed to just be like an hour or 2 left in the 24-hour period for it to be processed. And it's, you know, it was a weekday. Mm-hmm. So I'm just thinking I just have to sit tight at the border until it comes through. He was a trooper and he stayed there with me.
Oh.
And it didn't come through.
Oh.
And I'm like, okay. I was in this city called Bavet, and we nicknamed it Bad Vet because I nicknamed it Bad Vet because all of there were no Airbnbs. There were only casinos. And so we had to book a room at a casino. And, you know, everywhere has a night market. We go to the night market, and it just becomes abundantly clear that there are like Chinese gangs just running shit. I mean, I saw more Chinese people than I saw Cambodian or Vietnamese. And you've got, this is like an impoverished location, and you've got dudes driving like cars worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you know, there are casinos everywhere, and then, you know, some other buildings that were for questionable use based on the advertising. So that was wild. We got out of there as soon as possible the next morning, and I'd stayed in Siem Reap in Cambodia for the 3 days, and that's where Angkor Wat and a lot of other really beautiful temples are. And so we decided we'd go back to the capital, Phnom Penh, which is a lot closer to the border with Vietnam. And the idea was basically I had 3 or 4 more days until my flight. And I was going to camp out there until the night before. And if I never received it, then I was going to go back to Bangkok and I would have to get a new flight. But that was going to give me a lot of leeway on the processing time for the visa. So we went back there and they never processed it. I never got my visa back. That was just $90 down the drain and then another like $200 for the flight. So and then, the accommodation and the bus, I'd pre-booked everything in Vietnam. We were going to go stay at the beach. So between that and the overstay, I was down like $900. So really the trip should have been
closer to like 6,000.
Yeah, 6 to 7,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that as part of your. I'm glad you got back. Okay.
Yeah. Well, so
many detours.
I knew as soon as I got to Manila, I was going to be fine because I was going to be staying with my cousin, and he's very established there. He's my cousin once removed. He's my mom's cousin, and he knows the area well. Also, they speak English in the Philippines, and I had friends in Bangkok, so I went back and I stayed with a friend for like 2 nights, and my birthday is May 5th. I went back and stayed in Bangkok, I think, the nights of the 2nd and 3rd. And so this whole, like, extended Thai family throws, like, a birthday thing for me. It was amazing. It was really cool.
Good food?
Of course. I love Thai food. So that was a plus of traveling there. But, no, it was really cool. They gave me, like, 3 fabrics. One of them was for my mom to make a dress out of. One of them was like a traditional, well, the other 2 were like traditional garb for men, for me and my dad. And they showed me pictures, like Thai officials would wear a suit and then sometimes they would wear this over it. And it resembles a scarf almost. But I think they wore it around the waist. They showed me a couple pictures of people wearing it differently. But so they gave me that, and then they gave me all of these bracelets they're like these little red cloth bracelets, and they've got 5 white beads on them. And there's like a tradition. So when she was putting it on me, my friend's aunt, she like rubbed it down my wrist away from me, and she was like, think of all the patterns in your life that you want to let go of. And then she spoke in Thai. And so when I was recreating this with my friends and family, because they gave me a bunch of bracelets, and then I dispersed them to, my family and some of my closest friends. And I recreated everything but the speaking in Thai part. And so she did that and then said, invite, think about whatever you want to invite into your life. And then they brush it towards you and then they tie it. And the idea is that either when you decide that the change has happened, you cut it, or when it falls off naturally, it means it's happened. And I had a really interesting experience where the beads, one at a time, started disappearing off of it. And it wasn't like a blunt force thing. I remember waking up one morning and looking at it, and I was like, oh, I only have 4 beads. I think there were 5, but that would be kind of weird. Like, it didn't break or anything. I don't know how the bead would have fallen off. So, like, maybe there were just 4. And then a couple days later, I looked and there were 3. I was like, weird. And it went all the way down, and then the bracelet fell off, I think, at the start of November last year.
When you were talking about that tradition, it gave me chills.
Isn't that so cool?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
We've never had something like that growing up. Not in my
I
world.
know. Me neither. No, I came back and I was doing this for my dad and stepmom. And she was like, man, our culture sucks. I mean,
I
she,
get, yeah.
she didn't say it like that,
yeah.
but she was just like, why do we not have anything like this?
Yeah.
Like, that's such an amazing facet. And it's not like that's just the one thing. There's so many things across their culture where they have like these traditional practices and beliefs. And I wasn't raised with anything like that. And out of everyone I've spoken to, all my friends from the US, like, nobody has.
Now, is that a birthday tradition? Was it because you were a guest in their house? Is it just something they did? Do you know why they did that ceremony, for lack of a better term, with you specifically?
I believe it was a birthday thing.
It was a birthday thing.
But it may have been more of like a coming of age thing, perhaps. I don't know.
You would have been 19, turning
20. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you the exact reason, but they saw it as like a valuable gift. And it was a cool story too. The aunt who, gave it to me or put it on for me, she'd said she had so many, like all the way up her arm. And when she got engaged to her husband, she cut them all off. And I was like, oh, that's cool. So there's some sort of a occasion that you'll get them.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it is.
That's cool. That's so cool.
Yeah, or maybe I might be misremembering. Maybe it was that when she got engaged, she received a bunch of them as engagement gifts, and then when they actually were married, she cut them. But I'm pretty sure it was the first version. Yeah.
We sort of glossed over one thing.
Okay.
We jumped so into how it was more expensive than than it should have been. When you first were heading there, did you have any nerves, or did it feel like you were doing the right thing? Like the flight there, or at the airport, or landing?
I had a little bit of nerves, but it wasn't until right before. I'd already booked, like I was already committed. And so I guess kind of the way I saw it was that, I wasn't going to cancel my trip. So it didn't really matter if I felt any trepidation. And it was only like maybe the week of, I think I left on a Wednesday. So just the like 2 days before, I was kind of going, holy shit, like this is going to be a lot.
Yeah.
And I also, I had this idea that, like, I viewed the trip as a transformative opportunity, and I had an idea of what I wanted out of it, and I had maybe more of an ego-defined idea of what I wanted out of it. Where I was like, okay, I'm gonna get there, and I'm just gonna immediately be so disciplined and locked in. And I was just viewing it that, like, arriving at the location, I was just going to be that way. And I showed up, and I get off the plane, and it's really hot and humid, and I like humidity, but it was dead winter in Colorado. And so that was a little bit of whiplash. I expected it, but it was physically uncomfortable. And I had to orient myself. And so I got there, and I had a taxi set up to pick me up from the airport. And it took me to the gym. And the gym was farther from the beach than I thought. And I get there, and like my first impression is, this Aussie guy just bitching at reception, just complaining at them. He's like, oh, I lost my gloves. I left them somewhere. Like, why won't you let me borrow some? Just not being a very pleasant person. And, I land, and I have the mentality of like, oh, I'm so blessed to be here. And then I see this guy, and I'm like what? Like, how are you here? And that's your mentality.
Yeah.
But then it kind of hit just a few hours in where it was like, oh, wow, like I really don't know anybody. I don't know a single person here. And so I went to the food court at my gym, and I heard these two guys having a conversation in English, and they looked about my age, and I just went over and I was like, hey. And then I had friends. So I fixed that fast.
That's the way to do it.
Right? Yeah.
And did it work out? Did you guys maintain like a solid friendship?
I still talk to my friend Ned. He's British, my mate. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. No, we definitely bonded.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Was the food court mostly Thai food?
It was, yes.
So you got a pretty darn good meal within like hours of landing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and then they had like cheat meals on weekends. And I remember getting like, it was like fried chicken and waffles in like this cheese sauce. And I thought it sounded kind of weird. And then I had it and it was so good. But it was also just like it was good, but it was only good because it was different. Like I would never pick that over Thai food on a normal day.
Right.
But I got so used to Thai food. There was this place called Tony's. Everybody went to Tony's. It was super cheap. It's probably not very healthy relative to like any of the other stuff. But the way it's set up is you're on this fight street. And so there's gym equipment stores, or like basically fighting apparel stores, supplement stores, and restaurants. And it's all the way down the road, packed side by side. And then there's like hostels. And so you would just pick a place to eat on the road because everything was walkable. It was 10 minutes walking from my like bedroom to the gym, and the walk there was just everything I would need on a daily basis. So Tony's was right next to me. It was like the next building over. And very friendly guy. He spoke a bit of English, much more than most of the people there. And they had everything. And it was dirt cheap. So $1 is about 36 baht. Or it was when I was there. I mean, I think it's still pretty close. And it was like 50 baht for a meal. So,
jeez.
So I'm paying like $1.30.
Yeah.
$1.40. And I love spaghetti bolognese. And they had that at Tony's, and it was pretty good. And so I would get that. I would get like 2 meals. And I mean, I was very locked in for my first 3 weeks there. Well, I got food poisoning right away, naturally. And then after that, I was just, I was probably eating 5 to 6 meals a day and training hours. But one of the things that kind of hit me was I got there and I didn't feel any different. Right? I had this, whenever I fantasized about the trip, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to be in Thailand and I'm just going to be this beast, right? I'm just going to be totally disciplined 24/7 without effort, because that's just what going to Thailand is going to imbue in me, right? I didn't think about it I was just fantasizing. And so I get there and I'm like, fuck, I feel completely the same. I'm just in a different place. And I think that actually prompted a line of introspection that led me to a pretty important realization, which was just, it seems like common sense, but I hadn't directly thought about it before. And it was just the idea that, like, I am the constant in every environment I go to, and no environment is going to make me feel different. I just need to figure out how I want to feel and get to the point where I feel that way independently, and then I'll feel like that anywhere I go. And that was what wound up happening, right? But yeah, I was just living it up, eating a bunch of food, doing a bunch of kicks, getting my ass beat by some of these like multi-stadium champion coaches that are just I mean, it was really eye-opening too, because I was really good at kicking and very new to things like clinch and grappling. Like I had a very rudimentary, because I was doing MMA there. I was doing Muay Thai and MMA classes. And things like head movement, I was pretty all right at. And like distance management and my footwork, I mean, there were a couple like glaring weaknesses, but overall it was pretty solid. And then my kick was at like a professional level. But then like I couldn't clinch for shit. And I have this like, I mean, he might have been like 5'1", like this coach. He's like in his 40s, and he just grabs me in a clinch.
Done.
I couldn't do anything. It was insane, because I figured I'm so much bigger than this guy. Like I can just push him off of me.
Yeah.
No,
No,
not at all. I mean, I didn't have an ego going into it. I figured something like that was bound to happen, but it happened right away, and it was really cool. And then he taught me how to break out of it, and then he'd like let me get away with it. He'd let me get out of it, and then he's just so good that I would do the thing, and then he just still wouldn't let me out. I'm doing the same techniques as him. Like, he's teaching me the best stuff.
Yeah.
But he just their understanding of it is just so comprehensive. It's like I might know how to throw a kick really well, but like there are only so many opportunities to throw a fully loaded, just, one kick man kick. And it's really a war of attrition. And so, and I was aware of that. I didn't have this, I wasn't cocky or anything, but it was really cool to see.
How, so someone like that guy that you were just describing,
Yeah.
did you ever get to talk with him about, like, to learn how extensive his fighting history had been?
Oh, well, he was like multiple time champion of some of the biggest Muay Thai stadiums in the world. So.
Was that and was he pretty humble about who he trained, in the sense of like, if you walked through that door and you seemed like you were there to train, he was down? Did he have any kind of, not tests, but like anything he would look for before he would spend time to train with you?
No, he was very lighthearted, and so he definitely worked with a lot of like total beginners, and you just got different treatment based on how good you were and how serious you were. And so he had his favorite expression. He was like, "I stick you." He had this stick. He'd hit you. He hit me with it. And it was just part of the deal. But then, I watched him training one of my friends there, and she's brand new. Like literally had never trained before. And he's like giving her a massage, like during this session. And then I'm working with him, and I'm getting beat with this stick every time I fuck up. So they definitely, but, and his name was Oran. There was one coach I worked with. I don't even ever know if I learned his name. I just saw him training some UFC fighters, because there were UFC fighters at the gym I was training at. And I saw him working with this one guy, and they had a lot of one championship Muay Thai fighters training out of there too. And I saw him working with them, and just the way he guided them around, like if I had to put money on it, that guy would have been like in a Muay Thai battle royale of the gym. I'm putting my money on that guy.
Yeah.
And so I went over to him and I was like, can you teach me? And I got one-on-one coaching. And so I used a lot of them with him. And he didn't really speak any English. So sometimes it was hard to understand what he was correcting, which led to a lot of me doing something and then him doing the same thing. And sometimes it was really easy to tell the difference. But sometimes it was like, there's 10-degree difference in the angle of my knee relative to like my ankle when I'm throwing a knee. And then I get the angle right, but then I made an adjustment with my hip to compensate, and he didn't want that. And so every time I do that, like every time I screw up, I'm doing push-ups, sit-ups, and then I'm doing like 100 knees. And so I totally just skinned my knee like on the pad that we were using. But that was, I think, in the first like 2 sessions with him, I got more out of that than I had gotten probably collectively from every group class I've done in my life. It was insane. And then, like 2 days later, I sprained my ankle. So
How?
MMA. It was just we were doing a drill, and I was under the impression that we were going until someone got to a dominant position and then we reset. And I was going up against like a grappler. Like that was his mojo. He was a wrestler. And I'm very new to grappling. I've done some jiu-jitsu, I've done no wrestling at this point. And so he gets me in like a position to then throw me, and I tap. I'm like, okay, cool. And I relax and I start turning around. And he threw me while I was turning around. And my ankle got like caught, I think, under his foot as he lifted me, and it just like pulled it out. And I hit the mat, and I had searing pain all the way from my ankle through in my knee, all the way down along the inside of my shin bone. And I was lying there, and I was just thinking, like, please let my knee be okay. And it was just the ankle. But I was in crutches, and that was the end of, I went to the hospital, like, just to make sure nothing was broken. And and I had a few people tell me, like, oh yeah, just go to this supplement store. They'll get you set up with the right steroids. And I'm like, well, I don't know how much I trust that. Yeah. So, so I just got an air cast, and it was a good thing that I paid for travel insurance. Oh, I shouldn't be saying this, because I'm pretty sure at the hospital they wrote down my injury as falling off a stepladder. So.
Yes.
Which wasn't even what I told them. Like, I did not tell them I fell off a stepladder. I think they probably just get a lot of foreigners.
Yeah.
With like Muay Thai injuries, and they just make shit up for them. I don't know.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I got an air cast for that, and then I had 1 more week of accommodation, and I had like a meal pass, or like a food card I'd paid for. So I stayed that remaining week. And then I went, and I went to this pretty isolated beach for 2 weeks. And that was when I got into the routine of every day I was listening to that book, the Book of Mastery. And I was possibly the only person that spoke English in that town. Like, I was staying at a hotel with a bunch of Russian and Ukrainian refugees. And I had this like family-run restaurant that was right next door that had the best masaman curry I've ever. That's like my favorite curry, and that was the best place I've ever had it. So I'd go there every day. I'd go to the beach, and I had my laptop, and so I just spent time making music, basically.
Is that how you got into music, or were you in the music scene a little bit before Thailand?
No, I had been producing since I would say since right after I graduated. So, well, that's less time than I thought. I keep telling people I've been producing for 3 years. I've been producing for like 2 1/3.
It's close.
It's close.
It's not a huge
ballpark
stretch.
Yeah.
A little bit, but not a huge one.
Little. And so I used to be really into editing, like montages and like, edits, I guess, just to music, and I used After Effects, and I would get in there with all that, and I kind of replaced video games, and then I replaced that with making music. And that just stuck. And I'd been thinking about it for a while. Like, music has been the most consistent presence in my life since I was a kid. I mean, I would be at home. It's kind of funny. The music I used to listen to, how am I blanking the name on this? Iron Maiden. I would listen to Iron Maiden and Metallica, and I'd lie on the floor or on my bed with earbuds or headphones. And like I'd get home from school and my dad would be unavailable and I would lie on the floor and listen to music for hours. And so that was where it started, I guess. I mean, my dad's a musician. And so I was around, like he would sing me songs before I went to bed when I was really little. And I think that stuck. He plays guitar. And maybe because of that, I always had a little bit of a desire to learn. But I didn't think I had to pick between martial arts and like singing when I was a kid. And I didn't really voice that I cared about singing because I cared about martial arts way more. I thought it was way cooler. I was like, I want to be a ninja. Turns out ninja isn't a profession anymore.
No, it is not. Well, not in America anyways.
Yeah. Not a viable career path for me.
You're going to go be an assassin for some government.
That's
agency.
Different though. I
Right.
can't. That's not like running on rooftops and then jumping off and like punching some guy,
Right.
you know, beating up your enemies with your fists is a little outdated. So I have a lot of, I would say, musical influences. I listened to a lot of music on a regular basis since I was probably like 9, maybe younger.
Yeah, music's a powerful thing, man. That album I was playing when you came in is a new one by a guy named Ben Barnes. You ever heard of him?
No, but I recognized one of the songs.
I think he's really sort of newish to the music scene. He was an actor for a while. And then after the last show that he did, he just dropped this EP out of nowhere. And I don't know how the rest of the world reacted to it, but I was like, dude, you can sing? You can sing well. Like, it's crazy. And then this album came out about 2 months ago. Can't stop playing it.
Yeah.
I love it so much. Anyways, so when you were playing on the beach, was that part of your... Let me rephrase that. Why'd you start playing when you were on the beach? Was it just like because you had the time? Was it because you were injured? Was it because you were reading the book and sort of completing that metamorphosis that started this whole conversation?
Well, so I had been playing guitar I started producing, what would the year be? Like end of 2022, late 2022. And I started playing guitar a couple months after. And I started taking voice lessons a couple months after. And I actually did some voice lessons in Thailand, which just, nice. I was like, that would be cool. You know, see if they have a different approach. They don't. Classical singing is classical singing. Yeah. But then, when I went to the beach, I was like, I have all this time, right? It was kind of odd because before I went there, I had been every part of the day was like, okay, I need to train. And once I've trained enough, I can hang out with my friends.
Yep.
And what hanging out with my friends looks like is eating dinner and then going to sleep.
Yeah.
So, right, I was going to bed at like 8 and waking up at 5. And I felt amazing. I felt so good doing that. The jet lag, it was 26 hours total of commute, I think. And then on top of that, like a 13-hour time difference. So I was just so discombobulated. Like, it didn't matter. I'd been in planes in different time zones for more than a day. When I got there in the morning, but I was exhausted. And so I just stayed awake for as long as I could and probably fell asleep at like 7 p.m. and woke up at 4. And then I just adjusted that slightly. But I went from that to going to this beach where I have no social interaction. And it's called My Cow, by the way. That was the beach I was at. And I had a lot of time to myself. And I'd brought some books with me. And I didn't read them.
Well, you had the one.
I listened to the book. And I read part of one of the ones. Actually, I take it back. I finished one of them. I had started, and it was a small book, and I finished it. But for the most part, I did not do the amount of reading that I was anticipating.
Yeah.
I did this thing where I would just daily I would sit and do nothing for an hour, and it was really awesome. I started with 30 minutes, and the first time I did it, I enjoyed it so much. I did an hour, and it was just because there were so many things that I was remembering and things that I was thinking about that had just been, I guess, on the edge of my consciousness. Do you ever go to bed and you get in bed and then suddenly you have like 1,000 thoughts?
Usually more so in the sauna.
Okay.
Yeah. When I get in the sauna, my mind starts racing. And I don't know if it's because my mind is trying to like get its attention off of the heat. But my workout buddy, I asked him once because he seems to get through, we'll stay in there for 20 to 25 minutes. And he seems like he has such an easier time of it. And one time when we were about 10, 12 minutes in, I said, "What do you think about while you're in here?" He said, "Nothing." It's like, "What?" Like, I couldn't compute that answer. It's like, "What do you mean nothing?" He's like, "I just go blank slate and enjoy the 20 minutes." Because he doesn't listen to music. He doesn't talk to anyone unless someone starts a conversation with us, or if we're talking to each other, but usually we don't. We just sit there in silence. And I don't know how he does it, man. I wish I could do it. It seems very peaceful. I'm jealous of him.
Yeah.
But yeah, yes, I know what you mean. So during your hour, was it more 1,000 thoughts a minute, or was it more like you were able to go blank slate like my buddy Tyler can?
So I wasn't trying to go blank slate. All I wanted to do was spend an hour doing nothing. Like I couldn't look at my phone, I couldn't read anything. I remember as a kid, I would get so bored, I would look at the ceiling and I would try to form shapes with like the dots on the ceiling, right?
And stuff like that.
I
Yeah.
would, or like if there were words visible, I would read every word visible and then I would reread them. And so this was like nothing. Like there was no activity. I just wanted to sit and see what happened, because I tried this in the past like once or twice, and I always felt really good after. As like I intended it as a reset for my dopamine system, basically, and I I had a lot of thoughts come up, and a lot of it was memories. Actually, like it was a lot of memories, and then I was just thinking about things I hadn't thought about in years. I was thinking about things that I just hadn't thought about. And I I started doing it every day, and then I'd go to the beach and I'd swim for an hour, and it was basically the same thing. I would swim and think. And then eventually it was like I caught up on all my emails.
Huh.
And I got to everything, and then it was just calm, and that has kind of persisted.
Where were you for that hour of thinking?
Sitting on my bed.
Would you ever fall asleep?
No.
No.
No, I didn't do it at night.
Would you set a timer, or
Yeah,
would you just?
I set a timer.
You set a timer. And you said it continued. Do you still do some sort of meditative practice to this day?
I haven't been super recently, but I when I moved here, I was in the routine of listening to Joe Dispenza meditations every day.
Do you want to get back to it?
Yeah. And
Do you think? Go ahead.
and I need so when I finished the Book of Mastery, there are like 2 sequels. And he says at the end of the book, take like, don't start the next book right away. Just let this slowly integrate itself. It feels like a download, like listening to the book. The words are there, like the words are interesting and clear. To me, it felt, most of it was very easy to follow. And actually the like calming my mind thing that you mentioned, I had to do that when I would listen to it, because I would start listening and then my mind would wander and then I would miss parts. And every time that happened, I rewound it and I listened. I didn't miss a word of the book. And it got easier for me to focus as I went farther. And when I started doing the the thing where I'd sit and do nothing, that transferred, that carried over, and it made it. If I did that before I listened to the book, I had no issue focusing on the book the entire time, and usually it was like 40 minutes a day. So I finished it, and then he says, take some time and let this integrate into your life. And I looked it up, and I think the next book came out 6 months later or something. There's a certain block of time. And I decided that I was going to wait at least that long before starting the next one. And I wanted to start right away because it was amazing. And I made myself wait. And I'm now at the point where it's been about 9 months, and I want to start the next one. So I want to incorporate that, and then the Joe Dispenza meditations.
That's awesome. Making me think maybe I should. We're so fast. I'll just talk about me. Life is so fast paced that sometimes I think I need that.
Mm-hmm.
Like that 30 minutes of just stopping and sitting. And I love the analogy you gave of just catching up on emails, catching up on mind emails.
Yeah.
Maybe that would help me. Maybe that would translate to books in the sauna, because I do the same thing when I'm listening to audiobooks where I'll find that my mind wandered, and I do the exact same thing. I'll rewind until I hear something that I registered, and then I'll be like, all right, this is my new starting point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd get frustrated doing that because I would replay the same 2-minute chunk.
I've done that
6 times in a row.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why can't I focus on it? Why is it so difficult for me to continue following the words? And it was because there were so many places my mind wanted to wander, but didn't have the freedom to when I was occupied.
Yeah.
And so actually I do have a daily practice now that I think gives me the space for a lot of this. And so I do like a breathing workout for singing. It trains like muscular coordination and breath control and breath support. And it's 26 minutes long. Nice. And so and I do that every day. And so that 26 minutes is very calming. And it's also, it helped in ways that I didn't foresee. Like that 26 minutes, I'm so used to it now. I know everything he says, and I just follow along. But then I go and I remember to take my vitamins while I do it. And I go in the kitchen, and if there are any dishes I need to clean, I clean them. And like if there's anything around the house that I need to take care of, it gets done in those 26 minutes.
Nice.
And I feel like there's no conflict in activity because a big portion of the 26 is just rest and observing the breath in between the different exercises. And so, when I'm doing something like one of the things is breathing out like warm, moist air with no sound, like all the way to fully deplete the lungs. I can't really do that while I'm trying to do another task. So I just pause and I do it, and then I go back to the task, and it feels like it works very well.
I like that. All right. How did you get to Austin?
Okay. Honestly, I would say the number one thing that brought me here was that there's a lot to do. I wanted a better social life. I wanted to meet people. Before I went to Asia, living in a more diverse location wasn't really something I was cognizant of or cared about or thought I cared about. But after going to Asia and then coming back and staying, because I stayed like 3 weeks in Boulder, and then I went to the Gorge, I decided I was a lot less interested in living somewhere where everybody's white compared to before. Just because there were things about it, how I'd perceived, like I believe the difference between two individuals is greater than the difference between two races, right? And I don't think that, and so because of that, I was like, well, you can have just as diverse of a group of people in terms of character and personality, regardless of how diverse it is culturally. And that might hold up, but there were just other things that I wasn't thinking of. And then after going and experiencing such different culture in a number of different places and being so immersed in it, I came back and I was like, okay, it would be nice if I lived somewhere that had more more people. But I had already committed to moving to Austin. So the things that initially drew me here were it has a great combat sports scene.
Yep.
It has a great music scene.
Yep.
And there's a lot to do socially.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love that. And when did you get here?
September.
Still so new.
Yeah.
Are you finding some of the stuff that you wanted to find?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other reasons was because now I'm a realtor. That's my full-time job.
Okay.
And it's kind of hard to do that if you live somewhere with 3,000 people.
Yeah.
So, and Austin is a great place for it.
Yeah.
It's very competitive, but there's a massive amount of opportunity. And so that was one of the other reasons. And so far, that has been a great decision.
Good.
Well, I would say in every way it's been a great decision. Having this much space, it's me and one of my best friends, Ethan, and we have a house together, a 3-bedroom house. So we've both got a room, and then we have like a music studio room.
Yeah.
And the amount of autonomy has been really nice because I got very used to it in Asia. But then socially, like I go play pickleball and I meet so many people doing that. And when I first got here, I did this thing called Time Left, which is an app that organizes you to do a dinner with like 5 strangers.
Really?
Yeah.
What's it called?
Time Left.
LEFT? Like the amount of time you have left in the
Yeah,
day,
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
like a play on words.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to do that.
Yeah. I did that. I think I signed up for a month, and then I went the first 4 weeks, and I really enjoyed that. And then I kind of started just seeing the same people every week. So I was like, okay, well, I don't need to keep paying for this. I can just hang out with you.
Right. Yeah.
at pickleball.
Yeah.
Right. And so I really would like to have been doing volleyball since I got here, but I tried playing over the summer and I could sort of get away with playing beach, but my ankle would more often than not at least get tweaked once.
Yeah.
And so I have been on full rest since I got here for the ankle, and it's much closer to being fully recovered now.
You been to Zilker yet?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cool spot.
Yeah, it is.
We went out there this morning, let him run around for an hour. It was great.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had some friends there yesterday. And then in terms of music, I mean, my first few months here, I was just so busy with work, and then I went and saw family over the holidays and worked in between that I didn't really do a lot socially. And so now I'm starting to do more. Like I went to a concert for Haylene last night.
Nice.
She's a singer. Do you know who that is?
No.
Okay. I didn't expect you to.
But I said nice because I'm glad you went. I'm glad you're finding the time to do this stuff.
Yeah. And so she's a singer on a lot of electronic music.
Okay.
And a lot of electronic music that I listened to when I was getting into it. And so I should have brought it. She has this song called Rush Over Me that she sings on. And that song was like, when I was getting into that genre, I loved that song, right? And I show up at the event, and I went alone. And I'm chatting to the guy behind me in line because, I went alone. I was like, I need to make some friends, right? This is going to be way more fun if I know people. And so I turn around and I'm talking to him. And then he asks me, he's like, so you're here for Haylene? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, what's your favorite Haylene song? I was like, oh, I really like her stuff with like Seven Lions, who's the other artist. And I didn't want to say just Rush Over Me because she had other songs that I really liked, but I was like, that's probably it. He had made a bracelet with like the letters to spell out Rush Over Me with the intention of giving it to somebody, and he gave it to me.
Heck yeah.
So that was super cool.
That must have been special.
Yeah, I was stoked.
Do you know who Hans Zimmer is?
Yes.
Did you go to his show on Friday night by chance?
I am way too broke.
Fair. We went to me and my workout buddy. We went to that, and dude, best concert I've ever been to. It was because you're getting a mix of, some of it. I think probably the whole audience knew from movies we had seen, but then you're also getting a little bit of mix of Disney in there, so there's some nostalgia from that because he did The Lion King, and then some of the stuff I'd never heard before, but it was just so good, good.
That's definitely a dream collaboration. That would be so cool, working with Hans Zimmer on something.
Dude, yeah. Yes, it would. Yeah. Talk to me about soundbar settings, right? Or soundbar sets. Sorry.
Soundbar sets, yeah.
What's that?
So it's basically just pop-up raves. So Ethan, my roommate here, and one of my best friends, runs a branch for a mobile DJ company. And then I work for them part-time, and that's, you don't make any money when you start as a realtor. There's like 3 or 4 months of lag, typically. So that's how I've been paying rent since moving here, but now it's swapping over. So we did that over the summer, and we had these Bluetooth speakers called Soundbox, and they're awesome. They're loud. They have pretty good sound quality, and their battery lasts like 4 hours. So we figured we set up right on the beach. We've got 4 hours. And our first one we did, we had like 3 people show up. It was 2 of our friends helped us set up, and then one of them invited one of her friends, and they brought a couple more. And that was it. And we kind of just wound up playing beach volleyball. It was on the sand spit in Hood River.
Okay.
So it's in the Columbia River Gorge. And it is literally just this spit of sand that goes really far out into the river. And so we were all the way at the end. And so we have our DJ set up, and then you take like 5 steps past it and you're swimming. So it was really cool. And, we just loved it. We made flyers for our next event, and we promoted it on our social medias. And we planned that one a bit more. I think we called it Crank Set. And that one we did more like, we incorporated a mix of more like dubstep and whatnot. By the way, my first time DJing was at our first event.
Nice.
I learned on the spot. In fact, we threw a number of events, and it was pretty much my first that many times DJing.
Trial by fire.
Yeah, but it worked. I think producing music and being a musician just made it so much easier to grasp like the ideas of beat matching, and I know so many songs that's one of the biggest skills being a mobile DJ. It's just knowing the right song to play.
Yeah.
So we threw these raves, and our last one, inspired by Odessa, we called it the Last Goodbye Rave, and because I took him to see Odessa at the Gorge Amphitheater. And we had like 200 people come, and we had the beach packed. It was insane. It was really cool. And, the cops showed up, and they basically were like, okay, we just want to make sure no one goes on the train tracks. And other than that, you guys are good. Because we did research. We made sure that at least we weren't screwed if we got caught, right?
Right.
And they were completely cool with us doing it. We had sound checked to make sure that it was far enough away from the houses that we weren't just keeping people up.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was really fun. I crowd surfed.
Yeah. Was that your first one?
Yes, it was.
One of my buddies wants me to crowd surf so bad, and I'm just like, dude, there's not a lot of crowds where I trust a bunch of drunk people to keep a 225-pound man up and not drop me on my ass.
Yeah. Well, they dropped me on sand, so...
A little better? Probably than cement? Or
no, actually, okay. Dropped is not exactly what happened. I got to the end of the crowd and then, crushed this girl, basically, and I landed on my feet.
Oh. Yeah, that's
And
not
then she asked me if I was okay.
Oh, what a sweetheart.
And I was like, of course.
You're like, are you okay?
You're the one that hit the ground. So, yeah.
Why do you
She
think...
was one of my friends, actually. I knew her. So
Okay, that helps.
That helps
it's
a lot.
Not just
yeah,
a
yeah.
complete stranger
No,
that
no,
you demolished on accident.
No, good
I
friend.
didn't help it. I didn't know where I was going.
Yeah.
Why do you think it scaled so quickly? Did you guys just become better marketers? Was it word of mouth?
We were extremely consistent. Actually, I think that's the number one thing. We were doing like 2 to 3 a week. And we were good.
That helps.
Yeah. So people came out, and then, we made flyers. We put flyers up in coffee shops. We didn't know what demographic we were going to attract, and we got exactly who we wanted. So
Which is?
People that, like ravers. People that enjoy dance music and enjoy being outside.
Perfect.
So, yeah, and it wound up, we were open to, I guess, all ages, but it wound up mostly being like teenagers and people in their 20s.
Yeah.
And then just the consistency of doing it, and we would show up and we would do it the same no matter how many people were there. And so at the end, like, we did a lot of promotion, but we had a lot of people that had been to at least one of ours. And so we just wanted them to repost our stuff. And it definitely helps. We had, I think it was our third one we threw. The Northern Lights came out while I was DJing. I don't know if this was a picture you're going to pull up. Okay. Yeah, so that was unreal. The Northern Lights were like the number one bucket list thing I had in terms of nature and like things I wanted to see. And they were visible in Colorado while I was in Thailand. And I was just like, are you serious? And I remember calling one of my friends, and I was like, oh, did you see the Northern Lights? Like, they're out tonight. Like, are you going to go? He's like, well, I'm kind of tired. I think I'm just going to hit the sack. And
you were just mind blown by
I'm on the other end of the line. Like, are you fucking kidding me?
Was that last September?
No, that was when I was in... Oh, the picture or the...
The Northern Lights.
The picture when it came to Colorado.
Well, weren't they visible all over the U.S. for a little bit? Or from certain points?
That was when I was in Asia. So I think that was March or April.
Maybe it was April. I just remember one of my trips home to California last year. There's a night where my sister was like, did you guys know the Northern Lights were out tonight? And we were like, no. And she's like, do you want to try to find them? And we were like, yeah. And so there's all these different mountains would be a very generous term, but like different higher points around the city. And we were like rushing to all of them. And you could tell other people were looking for the same thing, because we'd get out there and we'd all be like, can you see them from this vantage point? Nope. Back in the car. Because we didn't know if they were going to be out for 5 minutes or an hour. And so we were just trying to find them as quickly as we could. And I think we stayed out till 1:30, 2 a.m. because we were like, well, we're out here. We're determined at this point. And then finally around like 1:45 in the morning, we were like, all right, we tried.
Them? Okay.
We did our best.
Yeah.
Let's go home.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, that was a sweet picture.
Yeah. Well, and we had no idea they were supposed to be visible. Like, we were just DJing, and then we looked up. We were like, wait.
What a surprise.
What? And so then we all got in the water and swam. And, like, we swam out far from our lights so that we would have the best view. And then we came back, and I got back at the DJ setup, and then Ethan was like, Sage, don't move. And you can see, he took a bunch of pictures because it's like a long exposure picture, and there were people moving in the background. And he was just like, all right, everybody, get out of frame, stand behind me. I need to get this picture.
Yeah.
And he got it. And I didn't know what it was going to look like. And the picture like developed or whatever, like the long exposure finished, and the entire crowd of people like screamed. And so I'm like, okay, it's got to be pretty good. And then I saw it, and I didn't expect it to be that amazing. Like, I mean, what a picture.
Yeah.
And we submitted it. So Soundbox did a weekly contest over the summer to see who could turn up the best with their speaker. And we submitted that and we won $1,000 speaker with it.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Life changes a lot, so we can't predict the future. But you're doing real estate,
Mm-hmm.
you're healing,
Mm-hmm.
you're doing some music, you're in Austin. What do you see on the horizon for you?
More music. That's, yeah. I mean, I want to put as much into real estate as I can now. Like, that is my livelihood for the next couple of years, if not more. And I am really committed to that. And I have found a team that's really amazing. It's the Amanda Ponce team. She's the founder. She's an amazing woman. I'm learning a lot from her. Not necessarily in the realm of real estate, but just in life. Like, she is an incredibly productive person. And she just figures out what she needs to do and then does it. And there's no barrier. It doesn't seem like there's any barrier to just doing the tasks that she needs to do. And I've witnessed in my life, and I think my dad probably imprinted this on me. We're like, oh, you need to get this thing done. And it's really easy. Okay, take like 6 months getting to it. And I have witnessed that in so many friends and peers. Like, that just seems to be incredibly common, where even when something is broken down into such a simple task, like you get your to-do list for the day. I went in and I shadowed before I joined the team. And I watched her go, okay, what do I need to do today? And she put like the top 5 things. And then no pause, started on number 1, finished it, started on number 2. And it took her like 10 minutes. And I'm like, holy shit. So I think that is a really important thing that I did. I think getting involved in it is building a lot of the life skills
Yes.
that I need to be successful as a musician. Like, because a lot of it is really similar. I mean, 1 degree of being a successful artist is just making enough music. Right? Like, you have to have the skill.
Yep.
But there are a lot of amazing singers. And very few of them are, names you'd recognize.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people that aren't great singers, and you know their name.
Yes.
So that was really cool to see, and that's part of what I like, that daily breathing workout I do. I was reading this book she gave me called One Thing. It's by Gary Keller, one of the founders of Keller Williams. And I think I read about 40 pages, and he's just talking about how if you want to be highly successful in whatever you do, you need to figure out the single task you need to do to get closer to it and do it over and over again. And I stopped reading the book and I started doing vocal exercises. So it worked. And that has just been like that. And then just realizing through real estate, like in terms of being successful and having a full pipeline of clients, it really kind of just comes down to, if you get 2 hours a day where you are just locked in, focused on prospecting, that's all you need. And I mean, obviously then I'm taking care of my clients that I have.
Yep.
But it was just really mind-blowing to see, okay, it's this simple. And then waking up, right? Because in my mind, I wake up, I have my meeting, and then it's the 2 hours right there. First thing I do on a weekday. And I had a few days where I got up and I didn't do it. And I was like, how? This is so easy. Why am I not doing it? And
fear of rejection?
I think if anything, it's fear of success. or just resistance to starting, because I know that succeeding with this is going to completely transform my life, right? I have very few expenses, and being successful with real estate will give me the ability to make music, basically. It'll give me the funds to resume vocal lessons and, multiple days a week. It'll give me studio time, pay for mixing and mastering, right? Producers. I produce, but, I think what I can do is I can capture the soul of the song, and then I would way rather hand it off to somebody who's been doing it for longer than I've been alive to just polish it and make it work. And so that's something that I would be able to finance. And then travel as well. Like it's Benny's last semester in Hawaii. His roommate moves out next month. I want to go stay with him before he goes,
Yeah.
I want to go stay for at least a few weeks, and if I'm making even just decent money with so little expenses, like I don't have any debt on anything. I wasn't a student. I never bought anything with like a payment plan. So I really just pay for rent, and I have food stamps. So I am very very bare bones right now. And so I would have the potential to go stay, go out, spend a week there, do all of the over the phone servicing that I can and all of the internet search, and then come back for a week, do all of the showings and appointments, go back and maybe do that a couple times and try to spend, I would love to spend my birthday there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You will.
Plus, I want to throw a rave in Hawaii.
You should.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
You definitely should.
Yeah.
If you want, I can cut this out, or you don't have to answer it, but just something that I picked up on while we've been here, sitting here talking. What's your relationship or dynamics like with like alcohol? I know you mentioned like you never, have never inhaled nicotine.
Yeah.
Do you do much drinking, smoking, anything at all, or have you never really ventured into that world?
Yeah. No, you can leave this in.
Okay.
I don't drink.
Why not?
I
And
don't,
even with caffeine, that was another thing I picked up on, which was when you mentioned you don't really take pre-workout as much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you just really talk to me about that?
Yeah. So initially, I would say my reasons in the past are maybe a little bit different than my reasons now, but I definitely went through a phase where I was drinking more. Like I partied a lot with Ethan. We had fun. We had a good time.
Yeah.
And I didn't really feel bad about that. Like I never did it to an unhealthy extent. I have experimented a bit with marijuana. Like I've smoked a few times. I've taken edibles. I have pushed the limit of the amount of alcohol and pot I can consume simultaneously. I found it. And that just isn't, like, I really don't get that much out of it.
Yeah.
And I also viewed it because I used to, I think when I had this thought, it was probably when I was 16. And I was like, I think I went to a party and I was talking to some of my friends just about the idea of how drinking gives you free courage, basically. And I just remember being cognizant of the fact that if I drank, it would be a lot easier to talk to whatever girl I wanted to talk to at the party. And I just had the thought, I'd never want being sober to be the limiting factor on who I can talk to or what I can do, like how much I'm able to express myself. And if I can't figure out how to do it sober, then I'll never drink. And so and then I also made a deal with myself that if there was anything I wanted to escape from, I wouldn't consume anything. And so I only would drink when I was in a good mood and, or at least wasn't using it as a form of escapism. And if I anticipated there being someone at the party that I wanted to hit on, I would be sober. Which, I think in theory it's pretty pure, but there were definitely a couple times where I went to the party and then the person that I wanted to flirt with did drink. And I was like, well, I'm not going to be the sober guy hitting on the drunk girl. So then I just didn't hit on her.
Yeah.
But that was part of my rationale. When I was like 16, that was one of my main reasons. And then I pretty much got over all of that stuff. And now it's more of just now I don't need it.
Yeah.
So
I've never heard that put in that frame before.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that, man. One of my buddies is going through he's going through a little stint right now, just sort of seeing how far he can push himself in life. And so he's temporarily given up alcohol and weed. And he's not saying it's gone forever. It's just sort of, he's not putting like a 60-day thing on it. It's just sort of a phase of life that he's in. And one thing that he's noticed is that, a lot of his friends do spend a lot of times on the weekends at bars, clubs, festivals, events where there is a lot of alcohol consumed. And he's now seeing the women he would hit on in this different light of like, I wish he was here to I could be like, hey, come over here and jump on the mic real quick.
Yeah.
But, it's one of those things. He's like, I'm starting to think that whoever my future girlfriend, wife, whatever is, I'm probably not going to find her in these scenes, because the longer I'm sober for, the less attractive these different events are. And I'm sort of figuring out through this stint of sobriety that this isn't really like where I thrive or where I think I want to meet my even like guy friends. He's just like, this is, I think I'm sort of over this whole let's go out and see how drunk we can get every Friday and Saturday phase. And he's only a little bit older than you. I think he's 25 or 26 right now. But it's been interesting to see that he made this decision and then how he's sort of evaluating his life through this sober lens.
Yeah.
But I love what you said about, hey, if I can't find the courage to do something sober, I'm going to have to re-listen to it a couple times. That was just so beautiful, man. I love that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And you discovered that at 16 years old. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And chuckle.
What do you want me to say?
No, I love it. I love it. I love it. It's great. It's great.
Actually, one of the other reasons that I kind of forgot about, and this is recently, is that alcohol stays on the vocal cords for 72 hours.
Really?
And so from a practical standpoint, if I drink, I spend half the week not being able to practice.
Interesting.
And now it's like, when is that ever worth it?
Yeah.
And so that was, and of course, if I have like a small glass of wine, I'm not worried. Right?
Yeah.
I'll be able to sing fine.
At what point, obviously it's different. It's probably different per person, but at what point does it affect your vocal cords? Like 2 in, 3 in, 4?
I have no idea, because I don't know if I've ever experienced any sort of backlash that wasn't from a lot. But it's really difficult to describe, because it's not like I am unable to sing afterwards, but it's like it sucks.
Yeah.
Like it feels dried out. Like the cords are dehydrated.
Yeah.
And it's just unpleasant. And funny enough, I think like the second highest like note I've ever been able to get to, I woke up after being the most fucked up I've ever been, and was lying in bed, and my throat like felt kind of like raspy, and I was just doing some lip trills to like warm my voice up so that I could talk. And then I was like, this is pretty high. And then I went and I checked, and I got up to a C6, which is really high
Yeah.
for reference. That's like a high note for a female soprano.
One of the opera singers at Hans on Friday night was singing some notes that almost seemed unhuman.
Yeah.
It was. I'll have to try to find a clip from one of his past live concerts and send it to you. But it was just, as someone who doesn't even sing, even I had it just an appreciation. I was like, holy fuck, what is she
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
See, that's the response that I want to elicit.
Yeah.
So have you ever heard of Dimash Kudaibergen?
I don't think so.
He's a Kazakhstani singer. I think he's the best singer that has ever lived. It is unbelievable what this guy can do. Like, you would just have to hear it.
Send me his name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know
I
if
mean,
I'll be able to spell that.
if you listened to some of this guy's songs, you would think there were 4 different people that sang it. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. He can sing higher than, well, I think he has the highest recorded live note ever, which he hit on accident. He was like, oh, I'm going to go for this one note that's really high. But then in the moment, I felt like I could go higher, so I just went for it. But it's more than range. He just is unbelievably pitch accurate. Like, he sounds synthesized when he's singing.
But he's not.
But he's not. It's just incredible. So a friend of mine, past client from personal training and now a good friend of mine, got me into contact with David Daniels, who's a really famous countertenor. And he had his whole classical singing career. And I'm going to start working with him. And so that I'm really looking forward to that.
Is he in Austin, or will it be like a virtual work?
It'll be virtual. He's in Michigan, which is the one bummer because I don't care that much for virtual lessons, but I think this man has so much to offer that even if, say, I get to the point where I could meet with him once a week and then I'm meeting with local people twice a week, or even if I meet with him every other week or something like that, what I really want to establish is a clear routine that I can be doing on my own and the things that I should be thinking about. And so, I mean, almost like a consultation, but then actually also working with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll be cool.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to pivot here a little bit.
Okay.
What generation are you part of, being 20 years old? Are you still Gen Z, or are you part of Gen A?
I have no idea. I don't know what the...
Do you think, that doesn't matter. Do you think about, do people your age come to mind that often?
What do you mean?
In general, do you think about, let me rephrase this a little bit for you. When I first started the podcast, I had no idea who my target audience was going to be. I sort of just started inviting guests on and recording and didn't really care about, or not care. I really look at the stats that much. And then about 12 or 16 months in, I forget, I looked at the numbers, and 65% of the audience is 24 years of age or younger. And an almost even 50 split between men and women. I was like, that's pretty cool. I didn't know who I was making this for, but I also didn't imagine a lot of like 14, 16, 20-year-olds tuning in either.
I see.
And so now a lot of times when I invite different guests on, not so much like when I'm approaching strangers in the gym, but you sort of count because you were a younger dude. So I was like, this could be cool. But when usually how I find guests is I go on Instagram and LinkedIn and I invite, I'll scroll through people's profiles and look for like some sort of hook. And then I'll be like, all right, Sage looks interesting for these 1, 2, 3 reasons. Let's invite him on. And so as we've hit the 100 episode mark and I'm heading into episode 200, something on top of mind for me is like, what kind of guests would could this age group benefit from? And so I'm constantly thinking about young people and the people in my life that are in that age range, and like, what are they happy about? What are they focused on? Are they going to college? Are they not going to college? Are they stressed out about something? If yes, what is it? And so, that age group is very much on top of mind for me right now.
I see.
So for you, I'm curious if you think about the status of your generation, things you're excited about, things you're worried about, if it doesn't come to mind at all, that's also a fine answer. I'm just curious if you think about the status of your colleagues much.
Yeah, it is. I think usually when I think about it, it's not in the most positive light. Uh, I definitely often connect more with people older than me, really consistently. And, there have only been a handful of people that were about my age, at least in recent years, that I felt actually were somebody that I had a similar, like, perception of life to. And I find a lot more commonly people in their mid-late 20s or early 30s are people that I relate to more. And so I think a really big degree of that is just in terms of like knowing myself. I think that's just something that I figured out really early. And so then when I see somebody who is kind of floundering about figuring that out, I have compassion for that because that was me fairly recently. But I also find it harder to connect with that person or have, I find I have less in common with those people. And the way we approach different circumstances is often a lot different. So off the top of my head, that would be my takeaway from my generation. But I also have a positive outlook in that I think a lot of people my age are kind of going back towards finding the value in actually being face to face with people and connecting.
Yeah.
And I think more people are becoming cognizant of the dangers of being chronically online and isolated. And I think COVID was really big for that, where almost everybody was isolated.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so I think there's a positive direction, at least. Well, I like to think there's a positive direction.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, let's say, for hypothetical sake, and because I actually don't think it's hypothetical at all, let's say there is someone who tuned into this episode today and they do sort of feel like, they're floundering about a little bit, and they know they are, and maybe that's why they tuned in. You've already given us such a great episode, of just things that you've discovered about yourself that I think that the last 2 hours is chock full of little nuggets that they could take away and potentially apply to their own life to get out of that flounder. But just to ask you directly, if you could speak to that person for 60 seconds to 3 minutes, you can take however short or however long you want. What do you have any thoughts that you would give to this person listening to us right now?
Yeah. This is actually something that I thought about potentially talking about.
Fuck
So I would say number one is just figure out what you want. I would say get an idea, have a clear image of what you want in life. Like if you could imagine in a few years' time, doesn't have to be a set amount of time, but just in the next 5-10 years or sooner, what would be the best case scenario possible for your life and for what you want? And then I would try to break that down into, that's a pretty big general image to have. Yeah. And so I would find something specific, and I'll just say, because I did this, I had a clear image of what I wanted, and that was the freedom to travel and have my own schedule always. Like the ability to constantly be going around the world. The ability to connect with almost anybody. So if there's a musician that I want to work with, I want to be in a position that I can reach out to them and collaborate. I want a community, right, of really close friends. So really a community that I would consider family. And I want to self-actualize through creation. So for me, that's making music. And that was the vision I had of the future. And so it might be easier for me because I had a pretty clear way to get there, and that was just make it with music. And it could, it could be split between multiple things, and I think that's fine, right? Because real estate is a big part of that for me right now, because I'm meeting people that I wouldn't have met otherwise, that are really amazing people, and it's a really big part of my growth. And so I would say be open to things like that, even if it's not what you would necessarily have in mind, because my one action is to make more music. And if I want to split it into two, it's to practice and make more music. And then the next step is to play it for people, right? And those are really actionable. I can wake up and I can practice. Yep. And then I can make music. Yep. And then I can go play it for people. And that's through repetition. I believe that that's all it will take. I think it's just repetition of the simple tasks. And so whatever that vision is, whatever your idea of what you want your life to look like, if you can trace that to one path and then figure out what the starting block or the first step is for that path, and get an idea like, okay, what's the one thing that I can do over and over again that's going to get me here? Just start doing that.
Love that. Thank you, man.
Yeah.
We may have talked about this already and I just didn't realize it. What did you mean when you jotted down parasocial relationships?
Oh. Yeah, that was just something that I have kind of become aware of, I suppose. I was referencing forming a pseudo relationship with somebody that you don't actually know in person, but you know their online persona, or their, say it's an actor, mm-hmm. and they're playing a character in a movie, and you feel like you would be best friends with that character. Or you're reading a book. Well, I'll say, when I was a teenager, I was a teenager pretty recently. When I was 14.
Last month.
Not last month, 10 months.
10 months ago.
When I was 14, I remember reading these fantasy novels. And in them, the main character is just the most badass with the coolest magical powers and everything, right? Yep. And then he's got just the most awesome girlfriend ever, right? And she's badass and she's got magical powers. And I'm reading this crushing on this fantasy character and imagining myself as the main character, right? And so, I don't know if I would necessarily lump that into what I was referring to with parasocial relationships today, but I just was thinking about that the other day, and I think it's interestingly really similar to, you go on YouTube and you watch a video of your favorite singer, and then they go do an interview and you watch their interview, and then you watch their other podcast, and then they come here and they talk to David and you watch that. I think it's really easy to feel like you have a connection to that person even though they don't know you exist. And I've heard it referenced a few times. And when I went to Asia, K-pop is very prominent there. And my association with K-pop before I knew any of the music was parasocial relationships, right? Fanatical fans, fanatics that would think that they had some sort of relationship to these performers, these right? They're actors.
Yeah.
Really, I imagine they're probably told to act a certain way to be the most appealing to whatever their audience is. And so I was very wary of that. And that's just something that it's so easy. Even being as aware of that as I am, I have found it very easy to recently I started playing poker with my friends, and found it very easy to watch a YouTube video of some professional poker player who's extremely charismatic explaining it, and feel like the person's talking to me, or like I'm relating to the person, especially like the more authentically they're sharing. And I don't delude myself into thinking they know me or develop an attachment to them, but I can see how easy it would be to have a connection like that form, or a pseudo connection like that form.
Do you think if the pseudo connection is formed to the right person, it could be a potential powerful thing to getting you to your goals? And the reason I'm asking that is because there's a podcaster out in Europe named Stephen Bartlett. He runs a show called Diary of a CEO. You ever heard of him?
I've heard of Diary of a CEO.
Probably watch more episodes of that podcast than any other podcast. I have a great admiration for him. I study how he interacts with his guests, the question he asks, and he's someone that I admire very much. And so I think that pseudo relationship for me is a good thing. On the flip side, I could also see how in some circumstances, if you're watching him almost with like an envy, it could be a very bad thing, right? Of like, Steven has so many more followers than I do, and his cameras are better and his lighting are better. So
right.
It seems like if you have the right pseudo relationship, it could be a very powerful thing, but it also could be a very crippling thing. It just sort of depends on how you're managing that relationship.
Yeah.
Thoughts around that?
Well, I think what you just described is a perfect example of what's healthy. Because you don't think... Have you ever met him or spoken to him?
No, but if I did, I would act like he's my brother.
Okay.
I would give him a hug, and I feel like we would immediately sit down, and even though he probably has no idea who I am, I feel like I could immediately just start talking to him about his show, his girlfriend, his desire to be a father, but also even if we just talked about podcasting for a couple hours, I'd be so down for that too.
I see. That's interesting. Because I feel like that does partially fall into what I was describing, but like I think the way it has motivated you is super healthy. I think that's great. I have plenty of musicians where I'll watch their live performances, and I'll watch their like behind the scenes songwriting, and I'm like, oh my God, if I ever, there's this singer Ben Howard, if I ever am writing a song with this guy, like of course I'm gonna ask him about he wrote my favorite song. It's called I Forget Where We Were. Of course I'm going to ask him about that. Like, how could I not? But I don't think he knows me. And it's like how they say never meet your heroes. Mm-hmm. Because just because someone appears a certain way on air or live, like you could meet them and they could have zero interest in you as a person.
Right.
And can you imagine how crushing that would be if for the past 3 years, especially because one of the things that's really common with this, at least from my understanding, with like K-pop, is people will think they're in like a romantic relationship with one of the stars.
Interesting.
I don't know how that happens. Maybe because they're like a fan and they like go to all of their shows or something. They think, oh, like she knows I'm here. Yeah. I don't know how they end up thinking that way. But imagine that's your reality for like 3 years, and then you meet the person and they're like, hi, thanks for being a fan, and then move on to the next person. Like, right? But, and I think I heard that there's an issue with like stalkers in Japan and maybe South Korea as well. Probably partially because of that. But I'm not educated enough on that to say more.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing I thought of too when you were talking initially about it was like the fictional character Daredevil, of him.
I know of him.
Like that's someone who I see a lot of myself in. And so like I've watched the movie. It is a terrible movie with Ben Affleck, but I love it because I'm a huge fan. I've read some of the comic books. I even have a book on the shelf called Daredevil Psychology because I saw it in a bookstore and I was like, well, of course I want to fucking read that. Yeah. And so that's like a fictional character that I'll never meet because it's impossible to. but I think I'm obsessed with him because I see a lot of parallels between his fictional
Yeah.
life and my life. Would that be closer to the kind of pseudo relationship that you were describing a little bit?
So, yeah, I mean, I think that's different. I think I don't no, I wouldn't call that like a parasocial relationship because it's not to a person, like an actual person that you have tricked yourself into thinking you have an actual relationship with.
Gotcha.
But I
Gotcha.
can relate massively to what you just said. There's this book series called Throne of Glass, and one of the main characters in it, his name is Dorian Havillard. And not at the beginning of the series. I didn't really relate to him at first, but I reread the series a few years later because it was still coming out when I first read it, and I revisited it. And a few books in, he what he goes through and what he has to personally overcome and the specific struggles and obstacles he has placed in front of him, I felt very much like almost like I was written into the book. Like I connected so much with his character and some of the thoughts he was having and and what he experienced and then how he was trying to sort it out. And I don't think that was unhealthy at all. I think like if anything that was healthy because in a way that made me feel like not alone.
Yeah.
And I would also add I think books can be an incredible place to get role models from. If my favorite character, the first time I read the series, my favorite character was named Rowan, and he's just like this 500-year-old, just badass, like war god, basically. Just beast. He's the coolest, the coldest motherfucker in the series, right? He's got like wind and ice magic. He can just like suffocate people. Just poof. And he's so cool. And reading it through and just seeing how assertive he was and like there were just various things where I was like, okay, if I acted this way instead of, this certain way I was acting, my life would improve. And so I think in a way, like, especially as a youth, right? Because first time I read that book, I think I was 13 or 14. I was in middle school. And I think that can be incredibly valuable. Yeah, I think having a fictional role model can almost function as much as a real one or a live one.
Yeah, agreed. I try to go on a walk every Saturday morning with about 180 to 100 other people, depending on what time of year it is. Peak of the summer, it's obviously a little bit less. Dead of the winter, it dips a little bit. But yesterday, we're all supposed to bring a topic every week, and one of the guys' topics was fiction. Is it a net positive or net negative in our lives? And I really meant to make my way to him at some point. I'm gonna have to look for him next week because I want to ask him, like, why was that your topic? What's been on your mind that you're thinking about this? Because I have no idea. Everyone gives just a very vague topic, and then the idea is that on this 2-hour walk, you sort of gravitate towards the people who topics you liked. But because there's so many frickin' people, sometimes even in that 2 hours, you only make it to like 2 or 3 individuals. But I'm gonna have to hunt him down. And be like,
Yeah.
what's on your mind, buddy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. I think fiction had a huge impact on who I've grown up to be. Why? Because I read so much.
Yeah, you did.
Like,
getting up out early.
I've probably read hundreds of books, so that comes out to like more than 10 a year, which I haven't been on pace with recently. But I read so many when I was younger.
You want to keep up with it, even as you stay busy with new ventures here in Austin?
I want to keep reading. I've read in the last year or last 2 years, quite a bit of nonfiction, so it's shifted, just educating myself.
Yeah.
But I think there's a mix. I want to have both. I don't see it as a priority that I would be. I have a hard time. I'll start a book and love it, and then I don't do anything until I finish it. I so maybe my favorite thing I've ever read is a manga called Berserk. And that was another one where one of the big struggles that the main character went through, I really connected with. And I get so emotionally invested in books and sometimes in shows and movies, but especially in books. I started reading it, and I would wake up and I would read until I had to go to work, and then I'd go to work and I'd come home and I'd read until like 3 hours later than I was supposed to go to bed. And I missed meals reading. Like
You love it.
I I think I finished it in about a week, definitely under 2 weeks, and it's got like 370 chapters, and the chapters are long. Like that was, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I did do during COVID the one silver. Well, there's a couple silver linings, but when I was first laid off, and this was before I had the podcast or anything, there's probably about a 3 month stretch where I was living alone, gyms were shut down, didn't have a job. I don't remember how many books it was, but probably somewhere between 12 and 20. And I'm so grateful for those 3 months. As weird
Yeah.
as it is to say, it was a mix of fiction and nonfiction. There's one or two like what are they called when like David writes a book about himself?
Autobiography.
Thank you. There's one or two autobiographies in there, and just that ability to put a pause on everything and just dive into those was really special. It was great.
Yeah,
I need to make more time for it.
yeah.
Someone just gave me a new one, and it's his book, and I do need to return it to him. And I like that because it gives me an accountability factor. He didn't put a time limit on it, but he was like, I do need this back because I'm not through it myself. So I
Yeah.
sort of want to read through that one, and probably like it's 380 pages and it's dense. I started it 2 nights ago. I'm like, this will not be a
Okay.
speed read.
Wow. Yeah.
But we'll see on that one.
Yeah.
Maybe like I'll give myself till March 15th or something.
I've got right now. I'm reading "Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself" by Joe Dispenza,
Excellent.
which I
like
love.
this.
I'm almost done with it. I'm done with everything but like the actual meditation practice. And then I recently read a few books. But what I want to read next, I have Howl's Moving Castle, which was a movie. It was like a favorite childhood movie. And I think my imagination was just completely captured by this. It was a novel written by an English woman, and then it was taken and adapted by like a Japanese animation studio. And so it's got like the most mystical feel. It's so hard to describe, but they captured something where the world feels totally boundless, and it's basically based on war. Like what's going on in the book is their nation is being strip bombed, and they're trying to stop the war. And I think it's from the perspective of this little girl who wants to. Well, she like has to carry on the family business as like a hat maker or something, and then she gets cursed by this evil witch to appear elderly. But Howl, this like wizard, he's like this young, really beautiful wizard, sees her, and she like somehow ends up in his moving castle. And he's just got this castle that like wanders around the hills, and everyone like knows of him, but they think he like eats little girls. Like he has this terrible reputation. And she goes into his castle, and it's just so magical. Like their fireplace is alive. Like he's this living flame, and he's got a personality. And they have doors. They have a door in the castle, and it can go to every city in the nation. And they have like these little shop fronts that it connects to. And I was just so like captivated by that as a kid. And I think having my imagination so inspired, like I think that made a big impact on what I cared about. I used to do creative writing. I did that for a while, and I think that carried over to songwriting pretty well.
I think so.
Yeah.
Sage King.
Yeah.
This was so much fun. Did you enjoy it?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
This was great. Yeah,
Okay.
this was great.
You're dude, I'm I have no idea what to expect when I invite strangers on, and every time I'm so pleasantly surprised that I just keep approaching people in gyms, in HEB, and like I was telling you earlier, not all of them come on, but I feel like the ones who they bring, like, they have like a juice about them, they show up. And you got the juice, man. Even just talking about your relationship with alcohol from 16 years old is it's so inspiring, man. And I really love everything that you bring to the table. I'm really grateful to have met you. I hope that whether it's from the sidelines, just watching you through Instagram, or directly if we stay in contact, I'm really excited to see where you go over the next couple years. And I hope that as your life progresses, if you want to come back and give us an update and just shoot the shit and talk with me every now and then on mic, my door is open to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I think it'd be really cool to come back when I have some music out.
Yes.
Once I've got my EP dropping, right, I can come on here and I can play some of the songs for you.
Once you do a rave in Hawaii,
okay,
I'm gonna have a few boxes I'll need you to
check. Yeah. Okay.
No, I'm kidding. Yeah, no, get a little life under your belt, come back again, and whenever the time is right, I plan on doing this for I was just talking about some of my goals with a close friend for this podcast, and I think this will be going for at least another 3 to 5 years minimum, so we have some time to work with.
Excellent.
To the audience, guys, I'm going to ask you a small favor on this one. Actually, it's a huge favor. If you stuck with us for the last 3 hours, do me a favor and send this to someone. And don't just send it to someone immediately. Maybe even think about it for a day or two and think about all the different topics we covered, from travel, recovering from injuries, relationships with alcohol, and just really meditate on what you took away from this episode, and then send it to one person, and then just tell them whatever is on your mind as to why you're sending it to them and why you think they should listen. And if you would do that for me, I would just have my gratitude. You will have my gratitude in helping not even helping, but just sharing it, with whoever it is that you feel is on your heart to share it with. So with that being said, I hope you guys come back next Saturday if you're a first-time listener. For all those that have been tuned in for a while, thank you so much for being here. It means the world to me, you guys. Stay healthy, stay happy, and have a good Saturday night, everyone. See ya.